Welcome, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the East Bay Regional Park District Board of Directors Workshop number 4. Today's May 21st, 2021, and it is 12:04. And Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Yes. Director Coffey,
Present.
Director Eccles,
Present.
Director Lane,
Present.
Director Waspy, Director Wieskamp, Director Corbett, Director Rosario.
Here.
So Director Wieskamp,
Hi, Sabrina. This is Dennis Waspy.
Director Waspy is here. Thank you. Director Wieskamp,
Director Wieskamp is here with us. She's having some technical difficulties, Sabrina.
okay, thank you. So we have 6. We are missing Director Corbett.
Yeah, and then she'll be joining us shortly.
Yeah, I'm
Excellent.
sorry, you guys. For some reason, I'm unable to connect via Zoom on my computer. So I guess I'm gonna have to talk to you guys on the phone.
Okay, thank you. And the staff members that are here today are General Manager Landreth, District Council Victor, Assistant District Council Rosenberg, DGM Alvarez, AGM Kelchner, Chief Lisa Gordon, Chief Matt Grawl, Chief Brian Holt, Trails Development Program Manager Sean Dugan, and other staff members. Thank you.
Great, excellent. And I'm going to ask Director Beverly Lynn if she would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. Well, here I am. Okay. Yes. So will you please join me? Put your hands over the heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
with justice
and justice for all.
for all. Sometimes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Today's meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for board members to participate remotely. We are also providing live audio and video streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to submit written comments in one of 3 ways. Secretary Pennell, would you please explain the ways the public can submit comments?
Yes, thank you. The public comments can be submitted via email to Sabrina Pennell at spennell@ebparks.org, via voicemail at 510-544-2651, and leaving a message which will be transcribed and given to the board, made a part of the public record. Or if you're interested in speaking during public comments, you could have contacted me at Sabrina Pennell at spennell@ebparks.org via email or using the Zoom link that was provided today. And I see that some people have entered the room today, and we will call on you when the comments, public comment period is at 3:30 p.m. today.
Great, thank you. Do any board members have any questions about the meeting procedures? I can't see the whole screen, so let me know. Just speak up if you have. And hearing none, a motion is in order.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And Director Eccles with a second. Sabina, can you please take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Director Rosario. Director Coffey,
Yes.
Director Eccles,
Yes.
Director Lane,
Yes.
Director Waspy,
Yes.
Director Wieskamp. I see her here. And Director Corbett, Director Rosario.
Aye,
We have a quorum.
great. And so just want to remind everyone that this is an informational meeting and no action will be taken by the board. And I would like to introduce our general manager, Sabrina Landreth.
Thank you, President Rosario. I will be very brief because I know we want to get to the meat of the meeting here and be able to dig into all of these amazing projects that the staff's been working on. I will just give you some overarching thoughts that I have as staff was briefing me before the workshop. And as a new person coming in my first 2 months here, just to acknowledge the extraordinary work and volume of projects that these three divisions work on, or departments work on within this division, with the limited staff and resources that they have. It's just really extraordinary. And also looking at the overall needs, current needs and future demands that we have. And as we all think about how we're going to balance that with our limited resources of staff and time and budget, certainly deeper conversations around prioritization will happen over the course of the next year. That's not the focus of today, but it's certainly something that we are already starting to put a lot of thought into as we come into your upcoming budget in the fall. So just want to acknowledge the staff and all of the incredible hard work, acknowledge that there are way more projects and needs out there than we are able to get to, demands that the public certainly is asking us to deliver on, and it's going to require some tough conversations around our prioritization, but that's not today. Today we get to have the easier part, which is to hear about what wonderful projects they're already working on. So I will go ahead and kick it over to Christina, who I think is going to introduce our day.
Thank you, General Manager Landreth. Christina Kelchner, Assistant General Manager of the Acquisition, Stewardship, and Development Division. Welcome, members of the board and public, to the 4th annual board workshop. This is the 4th out of 5. Our 5th board workshop will cover land items, and that will be July 9th. Today, we have an opportunity to talk about and hear some updates on our efforts to expand public access and also to steward the valuable protected resources that we have within our parklands. So we do have a lot of information to share. And of course, we want to be sure to save room to hear from the board members and all that valuable input. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge a very important person, the Executive Secretary of the ASD Division, Sabrina Pinnell. She worked very hard to put all this workshop together. She's been with the district for many, many years. And we could not do all the work that we do without Sabrina Pinnell. And today happens to be her birthday. And she couldn't imagine any better way than to spend it at a board workshop. So thank you, Sabrina Pinnell, for being here and for all of the amazing work that you do. We really appreciate you. Well, this year of the pandemic has certainly been a year like no other. And while we've been sheltered in place for over a year, in addition to COVID, other new challenges have really come to the forefront as priorities for where our focus needs to be. If you want to go to the next slide, Sabrina. So for ASD, we are looking at those focus areas in terms of public access, just a really increased focus on the need to be sure that we're providing equitable access and including all of the communities that we serve in the access to nature and access to our parks. also the increased demand for our parks, the increased popularity of our parks has really highlighted the need for additional public access throughout the park district. And then we have aging infrastructure in some of our older parks, and you'll hear from our design and construction department that maintenance of our existing infrastructure takes up at least half of their work. So in addition to the new projects they are providing, they're also doing a lot of important maintenance work. And the climate impacts, the threats of sea level rise, wildfire, drought, all of those threaten our existing infrastructure, and we need to be sure that the new projects we're designing are designed to be resilient to those climate impacts. And then our ongoing work to protect the resources, which are also an increased threat from climate impacts. Again, with wildfire and drought, we have species that are in the East Bay that are a significant risk of extinction, and the Park District plays a very important role in making sure we're protecting those resources. Next slide, Sabrina. And with these challenges, as Sabrina, the general manager, mentioned, we are continuing to build more complex projects, larger projects, and just more projects. The volume of the work has really gone up. And looking back, the district has been wildly and wonderfully successful in leveraging funding to expand park access and expand our parklands. And we have enough projects, new projects in the queue to really keep us busy for at least 2 to 3 years and beyond. The general manager mentioned looking ahead, we are already starting to have some deeper conversations about how we prioritize our work and be sure that we have developed clear criteria and processes for how we develop the work and our projects, how we prioritize those to make sure we're really meeting the needs and the emerging needs of our communities. The other thing that we're doing to meet these challenges is making sure that as a division, we are continuing to integrate and collaborate across disciplines. And last year, we made a few changes, which we talked about at a board workshop last year, and I think the year before, but just to provide you an update, we did make a couple of shifts. We integrated the Trails group into the larger planning department. So the Trails unit is a small but mighty team of 3. They deliver an incredible amount of work, and all of their work requires expertise in planning. All of them are talented planners themselves. And so with the integration into the planning group, they now have administrative support, they have analyst support, and they can share expertise more easily with the team. We also integrated the Restoration Programs Unit, formerly called the Environmental Programs Unit. Chris Barton and Carla, who have now been integrated into the design and construction team. We also added a new civil engineer, Scott Stoller, to that group because our restoration projects are a really important part of our mission and complex and challenging projects. So just to update the board that integration is fully happened and is going well and really has increased our ability to work together to deliver the project or the district's mission. So I would like to introduce, actually, I did want to mention as well, those highlighted in yellow, we have added some new positions this year, including Anna Marie Guerrero, who is our new Cultural Services Coordinator. You will meet her, you'll have an opportunity to meet her at the National Cultural Resources Committee meeting coming up later in June. She will be giving a presentation and we'll give her a full introduction at that time. When I first stepped into this role 2 years ago, the division had vacancies that were a third of the positions were vacant in the division. So we have been ramping up, filling our vacancies, and are now mostly fully staffed. And I'm very grateful for that. It helps us certainly to get the work done. So today we're going to have an opportunity. Sabrina, if you want to do the next slide. This is just a photo that I love. This is the entire division, obviously pre-COVID, when we were out at the Concord Naval Weapons Station on an all-hands meeting, and we had wonderful design charrettes about what do we do with those 70 former military bunkers out there, and how could we creatively reuse those as bat habitat or campsites. So that was a great day. This is the photo of the division. And today we will have, next slide, Sabrina. Today we'll have an opportunity to, we have 3 presentations. One is from Sean Dugan, the Trails Program Manager. And then we'll hear from the Design and Construction Department from Lisa Borgian on capital projects updates. And then we'll have an opportunity to hear from Matt Grau, the Chief of Stewardship, on some stewardship program updates. So I'm going to just introduce Sean Dugan. We're very lucky to have Sean. He's been with the district for 15 years. He started at the district as a GIS technician and quickly moved into trails. He does a bachelor's degree in natural resources management. And in 2018, somehow he found the time to go ahead and get his master's degree in urban and regional planning. And if you remember, 2018 was the year that Sean almost single-handedly managed the Pinole Shores Bridge project, a $14 million, very complicated project. So it was a busy year for him, and Sean just brings a wealth of expertise, knowledge, and good humor to the work of the district. The Trails Program Unit, as I mentioned, is small but mighty. We have 3 staff managing over $30 million in capital projects. The team is directly managing 12 projects, which will, when built, will add about 28 miles to the trail network. And there are 22 projects overall that the team is supporting that represent about $100 million worth of work in trail gap closures. This project, I always, when I meet with Sean, I say, Sean, can you ever bring me an easy project? The answer is no. The regional trail connection projects are challenging. What's left in the gaps are, of course, the most challenging pieces. Some of the challenges that the projects run into are railroads. We have a lot of work with railroad right-of-way, bridges, structures that often need to go over wetlands or other sensitive resources or railway. Of course, interagency work, multiple jurisdictions, multiple property acquisitions are needed. Utility conflicts, we have gas lines, other utility lines in the right-of-way. Adjacent and incompatible land uses, such as cement plants and other things next to our trails. And of course, the regulatory permitting and just finding the funding. So every project is unique, every project is challenging, and every project is critical to closing these gaps. So there's a lot to talk about when we talk about trails. Today, we're really going to focus on the capital projects to connect regional trails. When we talk about trails, that's a huge umbrella for a lot of things. As we all know, trails is the single the way that people engage with our parks the most, more than any other way. They engage with trails. Our surveys have shown us that. And so trails are, of course, a team effort. We work closely with operations and public safety and grants and the entire district. But the Trails Unit, these 3 folks, in addition to the regional trail connections, they do focus on in-park trails, design, construction, maintenance, working with ops on in-park trails. They support planning for new parks, so the HCP lands, Southern Las Trompas land use plan, are a couple of the big efforts going on right now. They support funding efforts. They're key members of the team on our federal RAISE grant application that the district is working on. And the staff serves on technical advisory committees in both counties, such as the Contra Costa Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the East Bay Greenway Project Development Team. And of course, the Trail User Working Group, they're also key members of that effort to try to address user conflicts on the trails. So it's a very busy group, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Sean Dugan, who's going to walk us through some updates on efforts to close gaps in our regional trails. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Christina. That was a great intro. You saved me a lot of time there. Good afternoon. As Christina mentioned, I'm Sean Dugan. I'm the Trails Program Manager. Happy to see you all on my screen today. We just went through the role of the Trails Department, or the Trails Program, excuse me. Still getting used to the new name. But today I want to show you some examples of the projects that we are currently focusing on, and you will see that range of from major capital project bridge construction to the in-park trail work that is also extremely important. So I hope you enjoy this. I have what's called a story map, and it's similar to what we did last year. And I will now share that. Give me a moment here to. And once I do this, I have no other control. So we're full steam ahead here. I just wanted to, these bullet points on the left. First of all, can we all see this?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the bullet points are what Christina just went over. On the right here is our mighty team out there with our tools. The only difference is that this picture was taken before the pandemic, so maybe add like 15 pounds to the guy on the left and some gray hair, and you'll recognize me when we see each other again. What you see up here are some tabs that are all of the projects that are listed in the summary, with a brief paragraph explaining a status update on there. The numbers correspond to the map that was also created in the packet, and they correspond to what you'll see now, which is each individual project with a vicinity map on the right, and then there'll be some additional graphics on the left. So if there's anything going on that looks strange, please just speak up. This usually runs pretty smoothly. So I have chosen a project from each ward today, and I'll go through them real quickly, and then we'll leave time for discussion. The first one is one that is actually completed, and this is an example of a project that didn't cost the Park District any money. It just cost us our time to review and negotiate the correct alignment of a trail that benefits our network. This is the John Muir Hospital here in the aerial view. There is a old piece of property here that's been vacant for years that I'm hovering over. That is an old orchard, it looks like. We had an easement around the Corvey Court and up this court here, dead end street, and then around to get folks into our property here, and then eventually to Shell Ridge open space, and then on to Mount Diablo and Diablo Foothills. So it wasn't always the best gap. I'll show you some before pictures. This is the Corvey Court easement. Trucks used to park here. The road wasn't very wide. There wasn't much delineating the trail for many years. We were trying to figure out a way that we could do this, but could never really agree where the fence should be. The neighbors didn't want it to narrow the road, etc. So John Muir Hospital, before we sunk some money into this, they approached us and said, we're ready to develop this property for our parking lot, and they're expanding the hospital. I should mention too that the old alignment, you can see here, it actually, you had to cross the parking lot and interact with vehicles, and then you had to cross the street at this intersection here up Corvey. So it was very circuitous, wasn't ideal. So what they proposed after speaking with us is a new trail alignment around the complete outside of the parking lot that will not have to interact with vehicles. And this is the eastern side of La Casa Villa. And then the new property that was developed, a parking lot, instead of going down Corvey Court and up this steep slope here, and then there's a very steep slope here, they agreed to construct a paved trail along the bottom half of this into our property back here. So there's the before picture, and then here's what Corvey Court looks like now, a little widened, a little nicer, neighbors are happy. I should mention too, the neighbors were tired of people walking behind their homes. This is a steep section of the trail that I mentioned. It's now restored and closed off. And now what we have is a much nicer paved trail experience. You see our signage there. That's the most work that we actually put into the development. This was putting up our signs in the design review. And John Muir Hospital will be maintaining this section of trail. So a real win-win, we feel, for the district whenever we can throw our sign on it and not have to do anything else is a good thing. This is what people will see from the trail that comes from Heather Farms Park up and signage there to Walnut Creek open space. So that was that's that, and that's one project that was completed. Now I'll bounce around and show this wonderful project here in Lone Tree Point in Rodeo. This project to be honest, is actually going to be complete within the next week. It's substantially complete today. I didn't know where we were going to be at when I wrote the packet. Really, I think this one is complete. We're just showing it in construction still because there's a few last minute things to do. But this project is about 2,600 feet of new paved San Francisco Bay Trail. And you can see here the community of Rodeo and the Rodeo Marina down here. And then if you look south, you see Hercules and a few of the segments that we've completed over the last few years within development. This project was, as I mentioned, a paved San Francisco Bay Trail extension with a bridge over a wetland and some staging area improvements to the Lone Tree Point staging area. This completion of this project actually creates 4 miles of continuous trail from Rodeo down to Wilson Point. Then eventually the project we just saw at the last board meeting, or sorry, 2 board meetings ago, the Point Pinole to Wilson Point project, when that's completed, then you're looking at a 30-mile continuous segment down to Oakland and Treasure Island. So a great gap closure. The project is being paved in this picture here. They're putting the final lift. And this is the view that you have from this trail, which is not a bad place to work. All the construction workers always let me know if they can stay a little longer. This is the bridge after it had been installed, not quite complete with the trail yet, but this is a 200-foot bridge that came in 4 pieces. And then 2 halves were constructed on either side of this wetland here. And then both halves were erected over the wetland by 2 500-ton cranes. And 2 workers were socially distanced in a basket and a 350-ton crane in the background there. And so this whole thing had to hover into place and then be connected in the middle. And it was definitely the most challenging part of the project, the most the riskiest part, I will say. But here's a picture of it completed with the all the equipment removed. You have some safety fencing on the abutments, and just spectacular views from here. It's getting very difficult to keep the public out of here. And so we would like to open this up in the next week, at least the western side. Here's a view looking north towards the Rodeo Marina and Sonoma County in the back over there. And the last but not least, we installed a restroom, a CXT restroom, which is actually a flush toilet that is connected to sewer, so it's not a vault toilet. And the water fountain, and there was an issue with the door, and the PG&E connecting the electrical is preventing this from being open to the public right now. And so that's what's going to delay the opening of the restroom for a little bit longer. The total project cost for this project, we always try to give you total project costs along the way and try to prepare you, but we never know until the project's really done. Well, I can tell you with great certainty that this project with design, CEQA, and construction was $4.7 million roughly, and just a great addition to the trail network. So now I'll pivot and show you a project that is one of those inner park trails that is one of the smaller projects that we work on, but I will say equally as effective, because here you have Pleasanton Ridge up here to the north of that's highlighted there in blue, and then you have a land bank parcel here in Garin Regional Park on the south. This small but mighty 0.35 mile trail connection here is made possible by the acquisition of the Chenard Vineyard or winery property earlier this year. And I'll zoom in here. You can see down here there's some vineyards and things. We were negotiating a floating easement over this property, and it was challenging. It's in a canyon. We couldn't really define the alignment. And when we acquired the property, that opened up the great possibility of this. And so we have identified that preliminary alignment. Here's a quick shot of looking west towards Garin. As you can see, it's just a beautiful part of the park district. In the bottom right here, you can see the barn, the old winery there, and the canyon that the trail will travel through. And this is us out there checking out the alignments. So I'm excited to get this done because it's going to be quite a trail experience. But I will also mention that if I zoom out over here, you see that it's connecting. Well, I should mention that I'm not going to talk about this unless there's questions today, but this is the Garin to Vargas Plateau segment of the Bay Area Ridge Trail that we've heard about over the Louis property. We are still getting permits and designing that and the railroad crossing down below. But with the opening of that, which should be within the next few years, and the completion of the Chenard piece that I'm talking about now, we'll be able to open this land bank parcel here and connect Pleasanton Ridge, Garin Regional Park, and Vargas Plateau together. Vargas will take a few more connections, but this 0.35 miles is actually quite huge in reality. So we hope to get this constructed in the next 3 years, and we have the opportunity to develop a small staging area at the barn there, so folks can access Garin from here. We do have some work to do over in Pleasanton Ridge to open the land bank parcels over here. So now I will bounce to one that's in between. You've all probably seen this project. This is Camp Parks Reserve Training Base over on the left here in the light green. This is the city of Dublin. The county line actually travels right diagonally through the orange line up top, which is a trail gap in the Tassajara Creek Trail. And down below, you can see here we have our staging area and the trail terminus right here. So we had an easement over Camp Parks property, which is in the red here. And then recently, in the last few years, Dublin, within the city of Dublin, the Wallace Ranch development was completed. This is an earlier photo, but they built and maintain about a mile segment of the Tassajara Creek Trail, which is currently landlocked. And so this really put the impetus behind us to complete the segment, at least connecting the southern portion through an easement that we've had with the U.S. Army for many years. Now, the issue is that the easement and the boundary of the fence of the base, as well as the Tassajara Creek itself, what didn't quite accommodate the use of our easement as we would like. And there's also a gap to the north of Wallace Ranch up to Windermere Parkway. You can just see it up here on the top right. And so one of the ways that we could get through here is to adjust the easement and activate our rights across the Army here, but also negotiate with the Army for additional land up top here where we can put the trail onto their property, which is an existing road, and not have to acquire more land and get easements from other property owners. I should mention too, there is a reversionary clause still here on this, on the base. It's about 300 acres. That the Park District actually used to own this and transferred it back as part of a three-party exchange agreement, but retained an easement and a reversionary clause so that if the Army never needs, if the Army no longer needs this area of the base, that it will revert back to the Park District. Within that, we have a slight adjustment at the bottom that we negotiated. Our design and construction department had to produce about 30% design plans to really be sure where we needed this trail. The idea was that the Army said, look, we'll talk to you, but you need to minimize the amount of space you take up on our property. And so we were able to do that and feel confident that our trail is not going to fall in the creek one day, and also take up as little property as we could. Up top, we were negotiating a new fence and a perimeter access road for them as they need to patrol, and a trail along an existing road, which would save us a lot of time and money from having to construct a new a new road. And the Army agreed. And so we've been working on this for several years, multiple base commanders. And finally, over the last couple of years, we're really able to form a relationship with the commander there and get their agreement. The easements are being drafted. We should hope that they're dedicated and we can accept them within this year. But it is the Army, so we're being patient. I should mention too that there was a small segment between Wallace Ranch and Camp Parks that our land staff was able to negotiate before they closed this development out in the last year. The developer gave us this little orange piece that will allow us to construct this smaller gap to reach the Camp Parks property as well. And so this one's been one that I didn't necessarily inherit, but have been working on for many, many years. And it's really great to see it getting this close to where we can, the next steps are to finalize the design, do any CEQA we need to do, any permitting, and we need construction funding. We have about $150,000 in the pot right now, which will get us so far, but we're going to need a little bit more funding. So, okay, and I will briefly give an update on another project. Now we're going over to Oakland, and this is in Ward 4. This is the Dungemere to Chabot Trail. Over here, you can see our main office headquarters. And in 2008, the Park District and Oakland worked together to acquire some land above the Dungemere home here and dedicate it to open space. The Park District contributed about $1.9 million in Measure WW funding, and the City of Oakland covered the rest, and also agreed to give us an easement once we build it for a trail through this property. So we started CEQA in about 2018, and we discovered the existence of an old landfill that wasn't properly closed. So my staff worked with the county and Oakland and Cal Recycle, the agency that has jurisdiction over this landfill, to close a portion of it or give us permission just to put a trail over it and do the best we could without having to close the entire landfill. Well, they didn't approve that. And so working with Oakland has agreed to pursue formal closure of this landfill, which will allow us to complete CEQA and then hopefully in the next 5 years. So this is great news, and working with Oakland is a great example of a partnership. Measure DD funding for open space was used to purchase this, along with Measure WW. And so this is us working together to really follow through with those commitments to the public. This is about a 3.3 mile trail, and this will allow folks to hike from Lake Chabot to our main headquarters for our board meetings at some point. So it's an exciting development there. I have two more, and this next one is also an example of a major capital project, but it's also an example of just not an easy project. The Army Corps of Engineers transferred half of this tidal canal in Oakland to the Park District a few years back, you may recall. And the reason we found this valuable is because you see in orange, I should have mentioned this before, orange are the gaps and the green is existing. Sorry, I don't mean to zoom around so much, but I can't quite get okay, thank you. There's a few gaps between Oakland and our Tidewater Boating Center here. The project that I'm going to discuss today is between High Street and Tidewater Boating Center, but there are a few gaps up at Fruitville, as well as north of the Park Street Bridge. So going north to south, we have the Park Street here, then we have Fruitville Avenue, and then we have High Street here. And this is a 0.2 mile segment of trail along the shoreline, and you see there's a sand and distribution plant, and then a gravel plant above. Is an established industrial use. Industrial uses are important. We're trying to blend recreational use with these uses, and it is a challenge. However, acquisition of this this tidal canal has given us leverage over this area to negotiate use of the land as well. And so we're working with Hanson Aggregates now on, this is a very schematic drawing of an easement that we hope to settle in the next year with this group. They're going to, this property owner is going to reconfigure their operations and upgrade them, and then we're going to try to design a trail that will accommodate those changes will accommodate the trail. Excuse me. What you have is a daily barge that comes in and unloads sand up this first conveyor belt into a hopper, and then up into this larger one that swivels. And so here we're standing where the future trail will be, and the Tidewater Boating Center is behind us. So the trick is, how do we get under or over that, right? So that's what we're working on. Here's a view looking back towards the Tidewater Boating Center. Here you can see the roof, standing on a dock that we now are technically the owner of and lease to this property owner because of the tidal canal property acquisition. And so we've pledged to work on this segment to High Street. Oakland is working on the other gaps up to the north, but I wanted to share some good news on that front. And I did receive your email, President Rosario. I had met with city staff. I thought it was going to be a surprise for you, but anyway, the Coast Guard previously. So this is the Park Street Bridge, and the tidal canal has to be a certain width. One of the ways that we can get past these bridges, Park Street Bridge is exactly identical to High Street Bridge to the south, which is what we're trying to get to. The city of Oakland worked with the Coast Guard and the county to propose a trail that will go under this bridge and on the outside of the current blue bumper that is protecting the abutment of this bridge. So this is a drawbridge that raises to a certain height to allow larger ships through. The Coast Guard went through a public process, which involved asking all the operators and all the users of the channel if this would be okay. And there were only a few comments that they received back regarding how the proposed boardwalk would attach to the land. But other than that, the Coast Guard has approved this for the city of Oakland, and Oakland will pursue a boardwalk that's about 10 feet wide with a covered under crossing of the bridge over to the other side where there are still trail gaps. But the reason why this is good news is, one, we've been working on this with Oakland for many years. And this is another improvement and extension of the San Francisco Bay Trail on the Oakland waterfront. But also because this bridge is identical to the High Street Bridge, we feel that a similar approach can be taken here at High Street. We've been told that there are some utility conflicts under this, which we'll need to work with the county on and things. But if the Coast Guard is approving, I did speak with the Coast Guard. The channel is the same width here as it is at Park Street. There should be the same process that we go through in approval if we can work on the utilities. So the other gaps up north are still being worked out with the private owners. And we'll continue to work with Oakland to determine what leverage our ownership of the tidal canal in this area can provide towards that effort. So those are a couple of Oakland projects. And last but not least, we have a project that you know very well, that you've heard about many times, but I wanted to just report that we have been working over the last few years to acquire grant funding for our piece of the puzzle, which is this area in green on this map. So this is a 2.5 San Francisco Bay Trail extension up in Richmond from the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge through the city of Richmond's Point Melotti property to Winehaven. And both the district and Richmond have been working to acquire grants from the, let me read here, excuse me, priority conservation area grants administered by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, $1 million. We've received $1.2 million in grant funding from the California Natural Resources Agency Trail and Greenways Prop 68 grant program. Incidentally, the same grant program that have funded $4 million for the Lone Tree Point project I mentioned earlier, and $900,000 from the California State Parks Recreational Trail Grant Program. And the good news is that we've said, so we've committed to Richmond to design, perform CEQA, and permit both segments. The segment in blue is Richmond's 1.25, and the segment in green is ours. If they can find the money, we've always said, look, they should be built together. It's a wise use of public funding, economies of scale, etc. And Richmond went for many of the same grants I just mentioned, and we're also successful. So I'll show you a funding picture here. We feel that building these two projects together will lower costs. And of course, we don't know how much construction will be until we receive bids, but our estimates with contingency and a high construction management cost for the individual segments here is all I have at the moment, show our segment being slightly more expensive at roughly just over 4 million, and Richmond's being just over 3.3 million. If we are working on construction, engineers' estimates for both segments being constructed together, which we feel will likely lower the cost. Here's the picture of the grants I mentioned. Here's the PCA, Prop 68, and the rec trails, and our bucket, and then any remaining. A lot of the funding, Measure WW, Measure CC, and things has been spent on design and things, but we're feeling very confident at 5.4 million that we have enough. Richmond, you may notice that theirs was about 3.3 million, and they're showing 3 million. They have committed and committed to finding the additional funding if needed through a cooperative funding agreement, which we're negotiating with them now, where they will reimburse us for the costs for construction and construction management of their piece, and for the actual costs, you will likely see that cooperative funding agreement come before you in the first or second meeting in July this year, and it'll be brought by our grants department. And I will close by saying that we should have final design by the end of this year and go out to bid by the end of this year or early next, and hope to begin construction in 2022. But we're currently negotiating and finalizing the easements with Chevron, which is being reviewed by our legal team and their legal team at the moment. Once we finalize a few minor nuances, we can finalize the design, and the permits are in the second round. We're talking with the agencies, and we've made the changes they've requested, and we're waiting to hear back. A few pictures. This is off of a bluff looking back towards the bridge. The trail will essentially travel along this road on the shore side. This beach will allow public access with a safe ramp down for cleanup, emergency vehicle access, as well as the public. It's a nice nook there in the world. This is looking from the old Richmond Beltway, which is where the trail will mostly be constructed on, towards the beach park, which is over here. As you can see, the Point Malade hillside in the background. Very great view. And here's just a rendering of the beach park. Pay no attention to the stripe down the middle. We don't do that, but I wanted to show all the happy people that will be out at at the Richmond Beach Park here. Point Malade Beach Park, which is actually a I think fairly unused spot, which will definitely be more appreciated once we have a trail through here. So with that, I hope that wasn't too fast, but I will stop sharing and take any questions and open for discussion. And again, like I said, I have all the projects in here. If you have questions, we can Zoom there, but we obviously don't have time to go through them all. So, but thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Great presentation. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. Questions from the board?
So on the last one, where was the former China shrimp camp? Was that where the beach is now? Do we know where that was along our trail alignment?
We have a general idea of that, and there's a lot of history out here, as you're alluding to. I'm going to share again. Sorry, I'm working on that. And I will do my best to. I believe can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The fish camp, I believe, was somewhere within this area here that I'm hovering over. There's old pictures that show this was cut back quite a bit. This used to be Point Malate, or Malate Point, I guess. So they show it kind of in this area, but we plan to work with TRAC and our naturalists, as well as the advocacy groups that are in the area out here, to have a series of interpretive panels interpreting the old whaling industry, the Chinese fish camps, the Native American existence long before us, and of course the Winehaven Winery.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
And Director Rosario, just for the record, Director Corbett has joined us.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Please.
Sean, on the Dunshmere Trail,
Mhm.
I was listening by phone, so hopefully I heard everything, but do we have any more specific timeline when Oakland will start or move forward on their work on closing the landfill or whatever the site is called?
Yeah. Right now, the stage we're in, we've provided all of our studies, all the information that we, sorry, I'm trying to find that. All of the information that we acquired during our discussions with Cal Recycle and the county, our proposed closure plan, all that's been shared. What Oakland is doing now is working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to determine the habitat here and what they'll approve, because what we have is a landfill that has habitat now for certain species, and so in order to cover that up, there's going to be an impact. So they're working with them right now to figure out what that'll look like. We've identified a great grant program that's administered by Cal Recycle that pays for closure of landfills, that can help with the cost of this. We're told that the process start to finish usually could take between 2 and 4 years. So I don't have a better timeline than that right now, but I do hold the commitment from Oakland as valuable to this, and we've been working with them the whole time. So, but that's about the timeline, I think, is 2 to 4 years.
That's good news that we're starting.
Agreed.
Any other questions from the board? I can't see everyone, so just go ahead and speak up.
This is Colin. I have one.
Yes, please.
Sean, on the Nedgeley staging area to Barrelessa Trail, the workbook describes a hang-up over the at-grade railroad crossing that could, it's obviously delaying the project, getting this worked out, and you reference ongoing negotiations and a possible hefty cost to the crossing. And could you give me a little more detail what's going on?
Sure. Yeah, so we are working with the Union Pacific Railroad and the California Public Utilities Commission on how we can add a pedestrian and bicycle, I will call it a leg, at the four-way intersection here. Maybe I'll zoom in. So the intersection has 4 quadrants. We're on the southwest quadrant here. You see our trail coming, our proposed trail through this, what will eventually be a longitudinal easement from Union Pacific Railroad that was negotiated as a part of the 2016 MOU. And in that MOU, it says that they'll approve the project if we make this intersection safe. They wanted us to work with the city. This is the city's at grade crossing. There's 4 tracks. It's very, very busy. You have the Amtrak station here to the right. And so we've given them a second round of design plans. They've given us their comments back. We've gone from everything discussing an overcrossing to full signalization of all 4 quadrants. We've bounced around quite a bit, and we've been pushing to do the cheapest thing possible, but also the safest thing possible. And I won't say that it's delayed. It's just the process that we're going through with them. What is going to happen, it looks like now, is that a lot of the issues with this crossing existed before our trail project. They exist now today, and now we're adding traffic, so to speak. So what is the issue is that they have some substandard panels in their crossings. You see these concrete panels in the underneath the railroad here. They don't approve crossing panels at this size anymore. They need to be 10 feet instead of 8 feet now. And we need to add a panel over here to allow for a exactly perpendicular 90-degree crossing of this area. And so if we do that, we have to upgrade all the panels. Additionally, we're putting in pedestrian access gates. So the signals need to be adjusted because they're too far outside of the roadway. And we need to put in a longitudinal crossing here to the south of the tracks, which is typically not approved by the CPUC whatsoever because it causes issues with cars trying to cross the tracks, getting stuck on the tracks. And obviously we can't have that. So there's some gate and signalization issues that are happening here too. So yes, I do believe that this will add cost to the project. We've negotiated and challenged the Union Pacific Railroad, I think, about as much as we can at this point. There's only so much they'll do and so much they'll agree to. And at some point, you just have to, agree to what they're asking or they won't approve the project. And so we're getting very close. I think we can, I'm hoping it's not cost prohibitive to the project, but I should mention that we don't have construction funding for this project yet. It is included in the RAISE grant proposal. We did apply for active transportation program funds in cycle 5 this last year. We were unsuccessful. And so we're still looking for additional funding for this either way. And there may be some potential partnerships with locally to try to improve some of the existing issues here. But other than that, the project is basically 90% designed, 95% designed, but we just need the railroad's approval. I hope that wasn't too much information.
Can I ask a question about that when you're done, Colin?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. That was plenty of information and I appreciate it.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
Sean, obviously the railroad has a lot of power, but aren't there some requirements or mandates for their participation in safety as well that would allow them to help support increased safety in this intersection? Obviously, I know their concern will be putting more people near their right of way, but don't they have any obligation? Aren't there any rules where they have some obligation to help share in the cost of safety?
Well, the CPUC is the regulatory agency that holds the Union Pacific Railroad Company accountable for their activities. The Union Pacific is a difficult animal. I don't know if Christina always has legal advice on the Union Pacific, but before she jumps in, I'll just say that the Union Pacific Railroad has always felt that they were here first. In any railroad, the railroad was here before government, before the city. They just want to run trains. The responsibility for the crossings, it's an approval process through Union Pacific Railroad. They'll approve these crossings, but they have to be up to their safety standards. But the rights to those crossings are given to the local jurisdiction that operates the signal. And so really, it's the local cities that are responsible for the crossings. The Union Pacific has been working with us on this MOU and has agreed to contribute funding for slope stabilization up the way. There may be an opportunity for us to obviously use that funding maybe here, or continue to have this discussion with Union Pacific on what it is that they're responsible for and what we're responsible for. But I will say they're the toughest company, agency, whatever you want to call them, to work with, because they really hold all the cards in these situations.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a well-known part of history.
Yeah, right.
So I have another question on this. So is this, is the trail adjacent to the railroad, is that going to be paved, and will we have to have a fence between the trail and the tracks?
Yes and yes. We will have, it'll be paved. It will be on the farthest, as closest to the hillside as we can get it, away from their tracks. And there will need to be a substantial fence. They usually require an 8-foot tall fence that's expanded metal that you can't climb, or it's very difficult to cut. We are working with them to get that lowered, especially near the intersection. It looks like it might be 3 feet to aid in visibility for folks. I'm hoping to get them to 6 feet, but yeah, this project was almost approved by the Union Pacific Railroad in early 2000s. And the fence issue was one of the hangups when we tried to revisit this later, is that their standards changed. You see at Eckley Pier and other areas along railroad property, there's still a 3-foot tall fence. Well, they no longer approve that. So that is one of the expenses to this project.
I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to. Go ahead, Director Wasby.
Thank you. Sean, thanks so much for you and your staff for doing such great work in the district. I truly appreciate it. I do have a question. I'm a little troubled about the Dunsmuir Heights to Chabot Trail. I thought it was less than, or just a little over a year ago when we were still meeting. I was getting all set to walk to a board meeting. I understand that there's some land issues, but and I'm a little confused. But whoever bought that property, don't you have to disclose that you had a landfill on your property? I mean, wouldn't that be the first thing you would disclose?
Well, it is. I don't know if I can comment entirely on the legal aspect of that. I will say this landfill is registered with the state. It is known, but I don't think at the time we purchased this property and we planned a trail here, we didn't actually know exactly where it would go. So our preferred alignment, given everything that goes into that process, wound up being on the outskirts of this landfill. We tried to avoid it once we figured out it was there, but there just isn't a less costly, less impactful solution that we found. This canyon is quite steep, so we obviously the first thing we wanted to do was avoid it, and we just found we couldn't. So I wouldn't say there was any fault or anything. It's just that as we went through the process, we just discovered there wasn't a better way.
But I think, having been in this field for a while, when cities and people make arrangements with landfill companies like Cal Recycle, you have closure, post-closure agreements to where, when inevitably every darn landfill leaks and every darn landfill becomes an environmental mess, that you can go back to Cal Recycle and say, okay, we had an agreement with you guys, pony up. And in this case, I hope we can, get to Cal Recycle and get them to, well, I don't know what we can get them to do, but I sure hope we try. I guess that's just a comment. And on the good side, thanks so much for Chouinard. I loved your explanation of the vital link with Chouinard. Thank you so much, Sean. I've been telling all my friends and constituents we bought a winery and I'm just ecstatic and say that now I can be more sophisticated and say it's a vital link to Vargas Plateau and Hayward Shoreline and Guerin. That's a better description. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before I ask mine?
Yeah, I have a Clayton Ranch
ahead.
question.
Go ahead, Beverly.
Yeah, so that's number 14. And I believe that we purchased Clayton Ranch and it wasn't an HCP purchase. That's correct. So it seems to me, given the constraints we keep getting with our HCP purchase properties, that we ought to be able to do perhaps something a little different in trails on Clayton Ranch. So is that the case or not?
Well, I know a portion of Clayton Ranch is not within the HCP, but I do think this is one of the projects that we're supporting planning on, and I think maybe someone better suited, maybe Brian Holt or Christina, can jump in and maybe answer that question better if they're here.
Yeah, thanks, Beverly. And as you know, we've been looking at Clayton Ranch for some time and looking at how we can open up land bank properties there. So I think you're right. We don't have the same HCP restrictions there, but that doesn't necessarily alleviate us from just permitting constraints. The site is Alameda Whipsnake habitat and everything else, but we have been working with Sean and his team. We do have a trail network planned through there. And we're in the process of identifying how we can open up some of the land bank properties through the preserve management plan that is currently being developed, and then looking at how we can move forward on the Clayton Ranch site specifically.
Thank you.
Great. Any other board members with questions before I go? Great. Sean, great presentation. I have a question on the Soaring Hawk and Anthony Chabot, project number 5. Exactly where are you planning to cross Redwood Road? Number 5, I think. Yeah. There you go.
You're muted, Sean.
Thank you. I suppose we all knew that would happen at some point today. And now I have a issue with this. Let's try that. Okay. So here we are along Redwood Road. Currently I just can't seem to get rid of that orange box, but the trail in blue loops down and the red portion crosses. Here's Bort Meadow staging. This is kind of a blind corner. The trail really just shoots you out right onto the road. So what we're looking to do is realign it back this way on the straighter portion of Redwood Road and have it cross right about here. The challenge is that the lower side of the road is actual road fill and things. So and we are working with the county on approving this crossing here. And this plan will be put in front of them. They needed a little bit more details. So this is kind of the most recent graphic I have from our design and construction department. There'll be some retaining walls and then a crossing, very visible crossing here. And the road is very, it's a lot safer here to cross.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I was just curious to how far back you were going to go. So that looks good.
Okay.
Yeah. I just remember it when Dennis and I will both remember when it was the motorcycle hill climbs.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
In fact, Redwood Road used to be called Blood Alley by the folks in the fire department because we had so many accidents there. It was almost on a weekly basis. And then East Bay Mud asked us to close close that portion because of the erosion that was going into the reservoir.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That ain't, if it was called Blood Alley, this just increased the importance.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to, I said, just when I heard, when I attended the Oakland DD Coalition meeting and heard Kristen Hathaway announce the agreement with the U.S. Coast Guard, I almost fell out of my chair. And so, so happy that we got that, and hopefully we can get the same with the High Street. But yeah, and also on top of that, they got an encroachment agreement with the approach to the Fruitvale Bridge, as you saw. And so, yeah, so I think we're getting closer and closer. These little bits in Oakland are really hard pieces. And so congratulations on progress on both sides.
Oh, yeah, great news. And again, these are underserved communities. There's lateral connections being made and efforts being made to connect the community to here. They score very well on grant applications. So we're crossing our fingers that we'll be able to get something done along the Oakland waterfront.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Any other questions before I believe we're scheduled for a little break. Director Lane.
Well, I don't see in our chart anything addressing our proposed narrow multi-use trail in the Sibley land use plan amendment. And we did, of course, receive some public comment from some of the people in the bike community about that. So may I ask what the status of that trail is right now?
Yeah, Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails and GIS. As you know, our design and construction department has been very focused on implementing the restoration of the McCosker Creek restoration. And then we have also been working very closely with the developer of the Wilder Ranch project to complete the conveyance of the Western Hills open space. And there's been some other things that have come up on trail plans related to that. And we're continuing to look forward how we can move forward those trails as these other pieces sort of come together. So knowing that the campground isn't necessarily going to be open for a while, and we need to get that open to make those connections. We've been evaluating the opportunities there. There's some constraints with just conservation easements in that area and where trails go through. So that's been part of the conversation about potentially looking at, do we swap conservation easements, or which trails remain open. And then of course the Trail User Working Group had come out of some of the comments and input that we had received on the trail, on the Sibley land use plan and the multi-use trail interests. So we're continuing to have those discussions on a bigger scale, not just focused on those Sibley trails.
Great. Thank
And
you.
Director Lane, if I could just add to that, we need to get permits. The resource agency permits is going to be the big hurdle, just to specifically answer your question. And I don't think we're even ready to submit the applications for those permits yet because of some of these other issues on their larger property that we're dealing with. So we have a ways to go before we can realize those trails.
Yeah, thank you. That.
Okay, and then my final one has to do with that Calaveras Ridge Trail number 15, and how exactly we're going to manage to get the trail continuously through there. It's that Olympic staging area is a pretty good size staging area, and things ought to be able to flow out of there. I know what happened was Lafayette put in a gated community, which cut off one of our possibilities. But I just wonder how we're going to manage this trail to be contiguous.
Well, I'll hopefully reassure you here that there's almost all of the right of way that we need is in hand for this trail. So if you look here, we've got this. I don't know what's up with this. Let me just try something here. There's an orange square. I don't know if you're all seeing that. It keeps popping up.
Well, we are, but we can ignore it.
Okay.
We're used to things like that.
Okay, good. This is the world we live in. So as you mentioned, there's a new roundabout at the intersection of Olympic and Pleasant Valley here. They included a sidewalk out to here as far as they could go, and that was at our request. And then we've surveyed and cleared the vegetation within our easement, which we got from the city, which is this long one here. And then there's this additional yellow piece. This is an older map. I'm not sure why it's highlighted in yellow, but just to show you that we have access from Olympic Boulevard up to our property here, which was what we refer to as the De Silva property. And it's less steep than we thought. That's good news. There's also a little bit of an encroachment by the fence. So we've been talking with the neighbor there, and they want a better fence. And so I'm hoping we can work with them to get the room we need and also provide them with the security that, address their security concerns and privacy concerns here. The De Silva piece, we've had stewardship look at it. There's an existing road and part of it, a gorgeous little piece of property. I'll say this is a view from it, kind of a cloudy day, but it's landlocked. There's the only people using it are people that are sneaking in from Rossmore. So that piece is not in land bank status. Actually, it's actually categorized as open, but there aren't any major concerns with that segment. We've received the easement we need along an existing road from the Liviakis family and the Lindbergh family, and an additional land here from Rossmore. Land acquisition worked very hard on that a few years back. Then there's the development here, Soldier Fields. That easement has been dedicated to this orange line here has been dedicated to the city of Lafayette. What occurred, which I think you're referring to, is that there was always a little bit of a gap here. This is the Grizzly Reservoir site owned by East Bay Mud. The trail used to go right through here through a license agreement. And they want to upgrade this site to 2 tanks, smaller tanks, and their design is sometime in the future. And so they did not renew the City of Lafayette's license agreement here. And so we're working with the developer to realign it around this property. And we think we've identified the area we need on this other property, and we're in negotiations with the City of Lafayette, with this developer here on the Soldier Fields parcel, and the family that owns this property. And then the easement below on this property here is already in hand, and we just need to build it. So it's really this last piece here that I'm highlighting in yellow. Once we have that, we can start the process. This is something that the late director John Sutter really, really wanted to see happen, and I really wanted to see it happen in his lifetime. I still feel great. I'm prioritizing this project because we're so close. But I don't think, to be honest, I thought I would have good news this year for you on this, but we're still talking. So, but I think it won't be long. It'll be within the next year that we'll see the pieces that we need for this puzzle, Director Lane.
Okay, so I actually know you're working away at the southern piece, and it was the northern access off of the roundabout and Olympic Boulevard that seems to me to be so tight that we might not even be able to get in there. So you're saying you've talked to the owners there, right? Yeah, that section.
Yeah, well, the owner of this property here has his fence a little bit on our easement. You can actually see it here, but once we cleared the vegetation, we had it surveyed. We had it also topographic surveyed. by our staff, and it's actually better news than we thought. It's wider than it looks, but we will need a safety barrier along this because it's a cliff on the downhill side. So, but again, it just needs to be designed, but it's not impossible.
Okay, and how wide would it be?
I think we can get probably a 6-foot trail in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Dr. Wieskamp.
Tyler Ranch. I know when we first got the property, we were talking about that this was perhaps going to steal some people away from Mission Peak because it would be very enticing to people who like to be very active. Does this seem a place where one of the trails might be a potential? We've been talking about mountain bikers, and certainly they've been talking to us, or something there.
When you say something there, referring to additional trail development?
Yes.
Well, we do have, I forget what I said here. Let me look. In Tyler, we have several miles of, I'm sorry?
You said an awful lot for us.
Well, you get me talking, Director Wieskamp, and we have several miles of trail that need to be developed in Tyler Ranch in order for people in the staging area to have something else to do. It's a very steep piece of property, so we do have a few alignments in there, and then we have several other alignments that are within the Pleasanton Ridge land use plan that will need to be developed as well, and this has become a priority for us because we would like to build out the land use plan trails in Pleasanton Ridge, and we haven't done it for several years. The permitting package that we have, hopefully we're going to see approved this year, has the doable segments that we could get permitted for. We're already developing another permit package for some additional trail mileage in there, and we understand the most vocal group of people during the Pleasanton Ridge land use plan, as you are well aware, was the mountain biking community. We also have illegal trail building in Pleasanton Ridge that I believe will be alleviated if we can build some sustainable, enjoyable trails for this community, and the trails that we've promised to build in there. But again, the permitting process is the long and lengthy thing here. But you're right, it is an opportunity for more trail development.
Tyler Ranch is so perfect because it appeals to both the city of Fremont and the Pleasanton, Livermore, Dublin area. A great number of people who live here in Livermore and a great number in Fremont are quite active with the thought. And I think if we're thoughtful about it, there should be a place in that area where we can do it. So I'm glad you're working on it. Yes, I know permitting takes forever.
Thank you. Yes, we will continue to look at that and keep that in mind. Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I have a.
Go ahead, Dr. Corbett.
Sean, is it okay if I ask a more general question about shoreline trails?
About shoreline trails? Sure, I'll do my best.
So what is our philosophy about planning forward to protect our shoreline trails when we know that there may be some environmental issues in the future with bay rise and all that? Is that a piece of your ongoing planning in the trail department?
Yeah, and I think Brian has a lot to say about that. We recently have completed the acronym is RAP.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, and I never remember the full name, so Brian will probably help out there. But
we call it the Cool Shoreline Plan for shoreline inundation.
Fill in the whatever blank you want. Yeah, I mean I will just say though, before Brian jumps in, that all of the trail projects that we're building along the shoreline are we're designing them to accommodate the projections of sea level rise in the next century here. So, but Brian, maybe you can give a little more background.
Well, yeah, I think, well, Director Corbett, you asked what our philosophy is. And I would say our philosophy is to maximize co-benefits on the shoreline as we look at sea level rise. How can we accommodate future sea levels while protecting public access, and then really looking at those nature-based solutions on how we can do that. So in general, that's our philosophy, and that's guided us on a lot of our plans. You can look at the Bay Trail at the Dotson Family Marsh, at Albany, and other places where we've sought to do that. And we did just recently complete the San Francisco Bay Trail Risk Assessment and Adaptation Prioritization Plan, the RAP project, and that's posted on our website on the planning page there, and is sort of, really one of the first efforts to kind of take a regional look at how we take all of the information that's been developed over the past decade from adapting to rising tides and from the San Francisco Estuary Institute and others, and how does that relate to our projects as we move forward. So so we're happy to have been able to wrap up the RAP project there. And then I'll just mention, this is where we're not the only agency, obviously, that has shoreline properties, and so the Bay Conservation Development Commission, BCDC, really regulates projects within the shoreline band and requires that projects be developed to anticipate future sea level rise. So that's just part of the permitting considerations in this new world that we deal with.
And I know in our newer, I know in our newer projects that we sometimes plan an upland trail as well. I'm thinking about Tidewater, for example, the planning on the Tidewater expansion. Will we at any time go back and look at some of our older shoreline trails and see if there's options for building upland trails if necessary?
So I guess I would answer that in that, all of our shoreline is going to have to be looked at, not just for trails, but for infrastructure,
Yes,
transportation, for anything else. And so we're always looking at opportunities for, how do we partner with our adjacent landowners? I think the work that was done recently down at the Hayward shoreline and the Hayward shoreline master plan provides a good roadmap about where, we have an existing old trail through there. We know there's going to be erosion problems and sea level rise problems. It's not necessarily a project that we can just take on and go do, but what we're trying to do is bring the flood control district, bring the city of Hayward, bring the hard Hayward area recreation district, or Loma sanitary district, and try to get everybody together so we're sort of coordinating on what a regional strategy is. So I think we've had similar conversations along the Martin Luther King Jr. shoreline with the Port of Oakland and others, and that's always just part of the conversation is as we're having to address the shoreline to just protect infrastructure and development, how do we make sure that we get an enhanced Bay Trail as part of that?
Thank you very much.
Great. Any other questions before we take a little break?
President Rosario, I didn't remember to say I have a 30-second plug here for my staff. And I would love to just do that because I showed you the picture, but I didn't talk about him. In the middle is Suzanne Wilson, and I just want to give I just am so proud of these two individuals because we are a tight team and we are doing a lot. I'm asking them to do a lot of things that they haven't done before, like negotiate with the railroad and develop land use closure plans and things of that nature. Suzanne's been here probably, I think she's been here now 12 years, and she's our senior planner, and she's working on the Point Mulade project. She's working on the Louis Ridge Trail project and the Dungeon to Chabot project. And like I said, she's I can basically ask her to do anything, and I just kind of wind her up like the Energizer Bunny, and she just goes. So I hope that didn't come out wrong, but yeah, she's just there's nothing she can't do. And then Sean Connolly, he came here from the mountains, and so I'm trying to keep him here because he did some trail planning up there over some mountainous terrain, but now he's really working on helping with the land use plans, trail alignments, overland, working instrumental with the Tassajara Creek Trail and the Army, attending meetings for their planning processes over there to get us in the door. And so again, totally busy. All of us have kids. He has a newborn baby, and yet I can still entirely count on these two to back me up and to get the work that we need done here. So I just want to give them a plug and thank them, and hopefully you get to see them in front of you soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did acknowledge them, and they have, hopefully they can reinstitute the Ivan Dixon program as well. On top of that.
Well, and I think they could probably use some more staff too.
Yeah.
Well, let's put that in the minutes.
Done.
It's being recorded.
So with that, I think we're due for a little break.
My God.
15 minutes?
Yay.
15?
Okay.
We're ready
We'll see you in
for
15 minutes. Great presentation, Sean.
We'll come
Thank
back
you,
at
Sean.
1:45.
Thank you, everyone.
So nice to have this report. Thank you.
Maybe we'll give them a couple more minutes to return.
Okay.
Everybody's still on mute as well.
Yay, team.
Anne's back.
Yep. Hey, Dee, I wanted to tell you I got that expensive accessory under my Prius.
Oh,
So I feel much safer when I go out into these parking lots.
yeah. We have one too.
Helps a local business.
We are live streaming now.
Great. Mhm. While we're waiting, I just want to relate to Director Wieskamp and Director Wasby. We had a great event at Black Diamond yesterday.
It sounded like it.
Yeah.
I hope to see it soon.
Oh, yes.
I think you're going to get good crowds.
I think so too. I see Director Coffey.
Yeah, I've been talking to 2 different journalists this morning with doing follow-up stories.
Oh, great. You're the perfect guy.
Well, you know, I'm like Sean. If you get me talking, I just keep going.
A true politician.
1, 2, 3.
No, just a park geek.
Well, I think we can classify you both. How's that? 2-part person.
I'll accept that.
Yeah. Multi-dimensional.
Yeah, it was good to see former director Jocelyn Combs attend the event as well.
Yeah.
All right.
She's planning on being at Del Val
Ah, that's tomorrow.
opening, so that's going to be great.
I will be there as well.
Good. Let's hope the wind dies down.
Yeah.
Sabrina and I almost blew away at Camp Arroyo. We've just mainly spent time inside. It was just like this out here.
I will take that. I will be forewarned. I will bring a windbreaker.
It's good to be prepared. I had 3 different layers in the car, but I couldn't keep my new Park District hat on even with ties, so I just held it in my hand. And we did look at the new yurt, though. Very nice.
Yeah. Okay, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5. I think we should go ahead and get started. Oh, there we go. There's 6.
All right.
And I'm sure Elizabeth will be with us shortly. So let's welcome everyone back. And we are, our next item is building and protecting park infrastructure, which is an update on capital projects. Now, welcome back, AGM Christina Kelcher.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Yes, next we have an opportunity to hear from our Design and Construction Department on some updates on capital projects. And the Design and Construction Department, or DECO, as we sometimes call it, we'll try not to use the acronym, but Design and Construction Department is made up of 30 staff. It is our largest department within the ASD division. The staff manages construction projects, designs construction projects, and then also provides construction inspection and surveys. They are a great team, and the work that they do requires effort and strategy and patience. And part of the reason that the projects are so challenging is that our projects are often unique. And Sean Dugan mentioned this in his presentation. Often staff are being asked to do something they've never done before, because unlike a transportation agency that might build roads and bridges all the time, our staff is often working on something that is a one-of-a-kind project. And you'll see Lisa is going to put up in a moment a photo of the Del Valle water treatment system, and that's a great example of replacing a system that was aging, was constructed 30 years ago, and we probably won't build another one of those for another 30 years. So these are one-off projects. They're one-of-a-kind projects, and often the news facilities that we do are one-of-a-kind projects as well, such as the coal mine exhibit, which was led by the exhibit team in public affairs, but design and construction needed to develop the shell, the structure, so that that exhibit could be installed inside of a real live silicon mine. And you know, people have not necessarily built a structure before to put an exhibit inside of a mine. And so these are one-of-a-kind projects, and they're complicated. And in terms of regulatory and grant funding, they don't, you know, it's often a square peg in a round hole. So it's a very talented team. They do an incredible amount of work. And as I mentioned last year, we did integrate the restoration projects unit. That was formerly called Environmental Programs Unit, but we renamed that, Chris and Carla and Scott, to better reflect the work that they do. So Chris and Barton and his team work on large restoration and public access projects, such as the one behind me here that you're all familiar with, the Albany Beach project at Golden Gate Fields. And their work really complements the work of the Capital Projects Unit within Design and Construction and the design units within the department. And those are all supported by the Construction Inspection and Survey Unit. So overseeing this impressive group is the Chief of Design and Construction, Lisa Gorgian. Lisa has been with the Park District 3 years this month. Feels like a lot longer to those of us who have worked with her. It's hard to remember a time that we didn't have her stellar leadership here, her hand on the ship. She came to the district with over 20 years of experience working for park districts of varying scales and levels, including city, county, state, and even another special district. And at those positions, she's worked in a variety of roles, including acquisition, planning, development, and even operations. And she is a licensed landscape architect in California and in Oregon. In addition to all this wonderful technical experience, Lisa is an excellent manager. She supports her staff, and she brings in training and resources. She's managed to create a lot of cohesion on the design and construction team, and has been just a wonderful leader for that department and for ASD and for the district as a whole. So it's my great pleasure to turn the presentation over to Lisa Gorgian.
Well, gosh, thank you so much, Christina. Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. As Christina had very nice, kind introduction, I'm Lisa Gorgian, the Chief of Design and Construction. And this presentation, much like Sean's, is a companion to the workshop packet that you received in the mail. It provides a high-level summary of the projects that we've been working on and cross-references them with the budget book. So there's page numbers, so you can look in the budget book for more information on each of the projects. And they are organized by phase, the different phases we're in. And so that's, it dives into more detail. So today we're just trying to give an overview similar to what Sean just did. Let's see. Sabrina, can you advance it to the next slide? Thank you. But before I get started, I wanted to just, as Christina mentioned, just talk and acknowledge the wonderful team in design and construction, in particular, the design managers, Chris Barton, Dale McCourt, Glenn Gilchrist, and Ren Bates, and our amazing admin analyst, Anita Slater, who put together most of the packet information, and she and I are always working together to try to, along with the whole team, figure out ways that we can describe what we're doing in a more accessible way, because sometimes as we talk, it's a little bit like inside baseball. So we're always trying to kind of peel back the layers to make it easier to understand what we're working on. And of course, the rest of the 24 folks who are in design and construction who've worked really hard this past year without really missing a beat to continue to deliver these projects. And so, you know, I try to acknowledge that every time I'm in front of you, but today in particular, because of reflecting back on this year, I just really wanted to acknowledge their work. And also, of course, while we're in design and construction, we really are part of ASD, working collaboratively with Sean, with Brian, with Matt's teams, everybody's teams, and then really across the district. And so Christina mentioned a little bit about my past, and one thing I've really so appreciated being at the district is really that shared vision and passion to advance the mission of the district. And I think everybody we work with has that and carries it close to our hearts as really wanting to work together on all these projects. So I'm lucky to be in front of you today, but really, as always, there's just so many folks that I'm leaning on. So with that, I'll just, as I've said before, let's look at the numbers. I secretly want to be on Marketplace, you can tell. So anyway, so this year we've got 66 active projects going on. The slide in front of you is kind of a summary of the information that's in the packet. And on the right side, or my right side, you can see the map. It's a little tiny, it's bigger in your packet, but you can see they're categorized by the phases. So the projects that we've completed, and then the ones that are in construction, the ones that are in design and permitting, and then pre-design. And we've broken out the number of projects by percentages. And as Christina mentioned earlier, you know, over half of what we work on is maintenance. It's major capital repair. She showed, there was a slide just previously about the Del Val water treatment. It also included distribution water lines as well. Those are really major one-off projects that, in my lifetime, that that we work on, and they're very complex. We also work on some of the more, I don't want to say routine, but projects that are that we've done before, and they're a little bit less complex. So we're lucky in the variety of the work that we do, and just with regard to when we're maintaining the district's assets. We also work on projects that really have a focus on restoration in public access. And so the Sibley McCosker is an example of that. The Dotson Family Marsh that was completed a couple years ago, that's another example. These projects
Hey, Jim, how's it going?
are
Good.
often
Thank you so much for
pretty, there's not very many of them, but they take a long, long time, you know, kind of like the trails projects that Sean described, where they're many years in the making. There's a lot of regulatory permits, agreements, work that needs to get done. So they take the staff capacity, they take it up over a number of years, and then they also cost a lot more. So while our maintenance projects often are, you know, in a couple $100,000 range, the restoration projects are in the $1 million ranges. So they're just much bigger in scale. They often attract much larger grants. So as you may recall, Kelly Barrington would often say there's not really a grant program for sewer lift stations. There are a lot of grants for restoration projects. So that's helpful. And then we do have projects about a little less than half, or about 40%, where we're expanding. And when I use that term, really what I'm talking about is these are new facilities for the public to access and access the parkland, access to nature. And then they're also new assets that we need to take care of. So that's kind of how we describe them. We were able to finish 12 projects last year, and we anticipate right now that we'll have about 17 projects in construction the remainder of the year. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is an example at Contra Loma where we are replacing a couple of the docks, and then we'll be replacing restrooms later. This item was in a consent this past Tuesday to award the contract for the dock replacement, which will demo these docks and replace them with aluminum, new aluminum ones. And then there's some other examples, kind of big and small, of other restoration that we're working on. Next slide. Let's see, so the restoration projects, they're, like I said, a small number, but large in scale in the dollar amount. This is Coyote Hills, where Chris is working on, Chris and his team are working on restoration of that area. And then also we'll have a new staging area, a new area with some trails. And there's some other examples at, again, at Sibley and Temescal, where we're also working with restoration. Next slide. Oh, okay. So this, we showed you last year some still photos of the Doolittle Trail, and we're so excited because we've been working with Caltrans in Oakland, and we'll start, go out to bid later this fall. But in the meantime, I thought it would be fun to show a video. So Sabrina is going to start this. It's going to start at Swan Way. So we're on Doolittle Drive, and you can see the trail, and you can see the bay, San Leandro Bay. Again, coming up north. Again, this trail is critical. It connects the east and south part of the park to the west of the park, where there's the Shoreline Center. So we're moving along, and to really create a much safer connection. It's a little bit faster portion where the trail will then enter into the park. And so we're looking back south, but we're in the park. So this is an existing portion of trail that will be rebuilt. And then this last part on the northern edge of the project is where we'll be rebuilding the boat launch and realigning the trail so we'll have a safer connection across to connect into the park. So anyway, we don't have a lot of projects that have kind of exciting renderings like that. So I wanted to share that. And we are excited that we're moving forward with the construction bidding later this fall. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the completed projects. This is at Encinal Beach. We had a board workshop or a board site visit a couple years ago here. Lots of camps, summer camps. We saw a whole bunch of little kids getting into sailboats. It looks a lot different now. It's adjacent, this property is owned by the city of Alameda. We lease it and maintain it. The city of Alameda upgraded their boat launch that's just on the other side of the beach, and restroom facilities the year before we started construction. We started construction last year, so they must have finished it the year before in 19. There's dune restoration and shoreline improvements and accessible mat you can see in the corner. And so the synergy between the improvements that the city of Alameda made and that the district has made has really transformed this site. And my understanding in talking to the park supervisor and folks who live in Alameda, that this has just been an incredible draw, really very popular. Let's see, next slide. Some of these projects we just covered on Tuesday when we were reviewing some of the jock work was done. So this was the Contra Loma swim lagoon repairs that were done last summer. Next slide. And the Del Val Visitor Center. My understanding is there's going to be an exciting dedication ribbon cutting next week for this. The design and construction staff worked to renovate the building. So that work was done to remove the old concession area and enter and do the shell of the building before the Public Affairs Creative Design Group came in and worked their magic with the new interpretive exhibits. So that should be pretty wonderful to see it for everybody next week. This is the infamous Del Val water system renovation project. You can see some of it in process here. And also it included the distribution lines. This project and the visitor center both received funds, a special appropriation from the state to help fund these projects. This project, as Glenn reminded me, is a one of a kind. So it was built specifically for the district needs. So, you know, as Christina mentioned, these are projects that are often unique, and it's not like we're going to build this again anytime soon. So they're complicated and we learn a lot. And the project team on this, it's been under construction for over 2 years. The team, both park operations and design and construction staff, have worked very closely on this because it has been such a unique project to work on. So we're excited. It's operational. It's not quite done, as Sean was mentioning about Lone Tree. This is similar. We're just like almost done. We're in the testing and commissioning phase. And so it's not fully automated yet, but will be soon. Next slide. This is at Garin. This is where we had 5 bridges that were replaced with 4 bridges and a ford crossing. So it's like rocks. So this was completed last year. Next slide. And the trail improvements and habitat improvements at Huckleberry Sibley. We talked about this as part of the JOC program as well. this was was a project we wanted to do because of trail damage that was happening. The water was going over the trail and eroding. But it was also an opportunity to, as part of the repairing the trail and removing a culvert, to improve fish passage. And that served as the mitigation for our maintenance, routine maintenance projects that we did last year. So it was kind of like a twofer. Next slide. And some work that was done at Hayward, both with the levee repairs and replacing some of the pilings on the Cogswell Marsh Bridge. Next slide. And we were able to wrap up the work that was happening at Lake Anza with the oxygenation project, and then dredging again at the Tilden Nature Area Sedimentation Basin. So this is just right below the Little Farm. Next slide. Okay, so those were projects that we finished. And so now I want to look ahead and to the coming year. And I've showed this slide before. I think it's helpful. It's always helpful for us to think about where and when in the life of a project will we have a touch point with the board. And so this is, we have kind of these diamonds that show where we're aiming to touch base, either with an update or board action. In the packet, we've put little blue squares by the projects that have upcoming board touch points. And as Sabrina and Christina mentioned just about project origination and prioritization, right now we are working on a number of projects, and how they've come to us they often have been identified as board priorities, or they're identified as part of voter approved projects in WW or AA or FF. And then certainly we work pretty closely with the field and operations as projects come up that are needed for major maintenance. In particular, we'll vet them with the executive team, who then of course brings them to the board as part of the budget process, or to get approved by the board. So that's where our projects are coming from. And throughout the life of the project, we work closely across the district with the other ASD teams, and then operations, government affairs, government affairs, the grants program. So we all work together to deliver these projects. So I'm going to go through a couple of those right now that we anticipate coming to the board later this year. Next slide. So we anticipate coming again on June 1st to transfer and appropriate some funds for major repair projects. So these are projects that are timely in nature, and so and because they have limited work windows because of our the routine maintenance permits that we have. So repairing the West Shore Trail at Lake Chabot, and then continuing some piling repairs at Point Isabel, at the Hoffman Channel Bridge, continuing the piling repair at Cogswell Marsh at Hayward, and then doing some rock wall repair at Dry Creek. Next slide. We are getting close to going out to bid for the Coyote Hills Dumbarton Quarry Service Yard. So we'll anticipate coming to the board to award that construction contract and appropriate funds. Next slide, yeah. Tyler, this was something that Director Wieskamp just mentioned. We anticipate coming to the board to award a construction contract for the staging area. As part of the staging area permit package, it also includes environmental permits for the trails. So we're working closely with Sean's group. Once we get the permits for the environmental clearance to start working on those trails, that's something we'll be working with so that we can ensure that the trail head, when the staging area is open, there's trails to use, and they will, my understanding is the ones that we'll be working on will be connecting to the existing trail system. And at Anthony Chabot, we are continuing to work on utility improvements. So last year we went out, we had a request for proposals to work on both the sewer and the electrical utilities, and we got no responses. And maybe it was COVID, or maybe it was too much, or it was two different disciplines. So we went back and rescoped and prioritized, and so have gone out with requests for proposals for the sewer work. We were able to get responses, which is super exciting. And so we'll be coming in front of the board to award that consultant contract to start looking at the sewer replacement at that park. I just showed the video of Doolittle Drive. We anticipate going out to bid in the fall, and then later in the fall coming to the board to authorize the construction contract. That work we anticipate will start in early 2022. And Roberts Pool, we've been in front of the board, I think in December, we were last in front of the board about this project. We anticipate going out to bid later this fall and awarding a construction contract, and then beginning work in early 2022 as well. And projects that we anticipate coming with just committee updates will be for the Peralta Oaks, improving the building across the street, Peralta Oaks North, and then giving an update on the Tilden Nature Area Jewel Lake feasibility study. Also giving an update on where we are with the Hayward Shoreline, Restore Hayward Marsh. So this is the former treatment marsh that's down along the shoreline there. And so now you're on the home stretch. This is the last part. We're looking at what we're in construction. So we have 6 projects that are in construction still, and then we'll be looking forward to bringing the remainder of these projects moving forward with construction later this year. So I'm going to just show some photos of what we have in construction. So this is Matt McDonald shared this a while ago. This is a drone photo of Coyote Hills Campground. They're on the last bit of phase 1 construction. So we're working really closely with the project team, both within the district and then at Dumbarton Quarry to wrap this up. We're really excited. Probably not as excited as Director Wieskamp or Jim, but we're excited. And this is at McLaughlin East Shore, where we're finishing up work at Brickyard Cove. This is a day use area. This is funded by the state. This is at Sibley McCosker. We're looking at the phase 1 of the creek restoration, and this year we've already started work on phase 2. So we anticipate this finishing up this year. And at Oyster Bay, fill continues to be imported soil, I should say. You're probably asking who fill is. Anyway, soil's coming in. That's for the bike skills course, future bike skills course, and then also a landscaped bowl for gatherings. And then on the right, you can see the disc golf. The final part of the disc golf will be put in by volunteers. They haven't been able to work this year, this past COVID, so they will anticipated to start in beginning of June, and we're really hoping that will get finished by the end of the year. And I think a couple last little ones. Well, actually, they're not too little. At Tilden, Lake Anza, we're replacing the dam spillway. That's a safety project. And at Coyote Hills, replacing the well for the agriculture, to support the agricultural aspect of that park. These are, we shared this slide last year. We've updated it. You know, this is specifically focusing to show new public access projects that we are working on and when we think they're anticipated to open. So by the end of this year, we're very confident Dunbar Quarry will be open, Brickyard Cove, next year, Pleasanton Ridge Tyler staging area, and Shadow Cliffs Interpretive Pavilion. We think that will be done actually this year. And then moving into 23 through 26, I like to emphasize anticipated, but we do feel confident that these are the projects that will be moving forward that provide new opportunities for the public. Okay, I think that's the last slide. Okay, well, here's some of our team. I just, again, wanted to thank you for the opportunity to give this update this afternoon, and I'll turn it back to Christina.
Thank you, Lisa. Excellent presentation and a lot of work. And I think we're just happy to take any questions from the board.
Great. Questions from the board? There's a lot here. Who wants to start? Director Wieskamp and then Director Coffey. Oh, you're on mute, Director Wieskamp.
I want to compliment them for what they achieved in a very difficult year on such a variety of projects. No, everything I wanted didn't happen, but an awful lot did. So good job.
Director Coffey.
Yeah, very fine presentation, Lisa. Thank you. I'm curious, of the 66 projects, are they, let me see, are they mostly projects that will ultimately result in construction contracts going out, and they'll be actually constructed with the use of outside contractors, as opposed to how much of that do we do internally through MAST?
I was just looking to see, I can follow up with you on that. Most of the, we sort of do a couple things. So we manage these major construction contracts, and if they're generally over 50,000, they will go out to bid. We also spend a lot of time, well, not a lot, but I would say we do spend a lot of time on design, and and when we're working on the design, that can either, the design work either is, again, folded into work that goes out to bid, or it's done internally by MAST. And so several of the projects that Sean showed you would be ones where design is supporting the trails team, and those projects would be built by MAST. A lot of the work that Matt's group will share later in terms of the maintenance work that's covered. I'm trying to get the new term right. I'm having trouble. routine maintenance, the design team does the design for those projects. And so those are done in-house by MAST. So to give you, so the projects that we identify in this packet are primarily projects that will go out to bid because they're big and complex. Work that we do that you don't necessarily see in the packet, just in terms of design support, is done, that work is often delivered in-house. Does that help? I can.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was trying to get, because I understood that most of these that you're presenting to us are major projects and would involve outside contractors and at times outside planners and
Right.
consultants and such, some more than others. But I've just been lately trying to get a feel for what we put out there for others to complete for us versus what we do internally. And I'm beginning to get a good idea of that recently. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
More questions from the board. Director Lane. We keep losing your picture.
I mean, once I turn off the picture, it doesn't want to come back in. Yeah. Oh, thank you again for that presentation. And it's really good reminder and a good, your maintenance, restoration, and expansion is helpful as you sort those out. And I know it takes a little while to kind of figure how they would fit. I have a couple of things, and one has to do with, well, it really has to do with design and appearance and what O'Connor calls the park eye. And for me, increasingly, as I've been on the board, I care about that. How do we think through how we want to brand things with our leaf? Does it stay in kind of one size all the time? And here's those opportunities where you could have it be quite large, or you could embed something in a trail, which did happen with one of our trails a couple of years ago. And I think we need to assert ourselves in symbolically showing that we did all this work on it. We got the land, we did the planning, we got the money, we executed it. And all too often people say, oh, I don't know whose trail this is. And I think there are ways, not only with trails, but with other things in which we could use our leaf as a brand more effectively. So that's one thing. And then, I kidded about, was Robert's Pool going to be beautiful? Everybody smiled and said, oh, yes. But I think when we're doing projects that are going to last for a long time and that are going to be visible, that we really need to think about how they are. And I was reminded of that when I saw some various transit, mass transit. When people do mass transit in major cities, doing art in those stations is a major part of it. And I know they have to fight it through because people say, oh, you're wasting money on art. But I think when we do things that are going to be here for a long time, we need to really think about that, and maybe something that has elements of what people would call art. And my other thing is that throughout the East Bay, we have artists who are building huge things inside warehouses, and they would kill to have a location where they could put one of those for like 5 years. It doesn't have to be a piece of art that is there permanently. And so, when you are looking at these things, I'd really like to have those thoughts, integrated into them, as especially, well, when you get to the design, because designers like to do that, but also for all of us to acknowledge. Yeah. So that's one thought. And then my other is that as you do sit down and talk about priorities, I do think it's really important to take a look at how long some of these things have been in land bank, or how long they've been in the process. I think of Clayton Ranch and how long that's been on the planning desk. And there are always reasons, but it's taking forever. And then, of course, the northern 1,000 acres of Las Trampas. That's land banked. We don't have access from Moraga. I think we need to keep in mind how long ago we purchased large properties and have that bump up the priority. We get excited about things that we've gotten most recently, but then we forget about Gleason and Hunsaker and Las Trampas, as far as I'm concerned. And I pointed out to Dee that they not finally, but they had a obituary for John Sutter in the Times yesterday. And one of the things that they quoted him, I mean, they must have, things in their files. They quoted him as saying, "I can't believe how patient Moraga has been in getting their access to Las Trampas, to this beautiful part of Las Trampas." And so when we do the priority, I would like us to just pop in how long it's been we own that. And the other one that I would mention is Garms in Pleasanton. We had Pleasanton staff when we were doing the Castle Ridge access emphasize that Garms has been there for a long time. And if you do Castle Ridge, are we going to delay Garms longer? So just take a look at how long we've had some of these properties and include that when you're looking at what your priorities are. Thank you.
Great. Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, I just, thank you, Director Lane. That was really, I really appreciate those comments. And I just wanted to share, you reminded me, some of the work that we do, Design and Construction does, we convene a park standards committee. And so it's kind of work that's hidden. It, doesn't result in something built, but the pieces of it result. And we, one of the nice things is just this collaborative interest to work with Creative Design Group about thinking about the leaf and when we can use the leaf. So we're having those conversations more actively, and also thinking about how we can make sure that when we are building new staging areas or new access, public access points, that they are welcoming and that they read as a park district facility, and that there's a sense of arrival, and that the design is very intentional. And so I think we recognize that is very important. And so I'm glad you brought it up, because it's kind of affirming that it's work that we're continuing on with.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing WPA things anymore. Although that stonework is pretty wonderful, but those initial things that we did, we wanted to do them fast. We wanted to open things up, and now we need to re-examine how we're doing that.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Because I'm going to take a turn here. Great presentation, Lisa. And I agree with Beverly Lane on the art piece. I think we need to find room where we can incorporate art into some of our parks, and it definitely doesn't have to be on a permanent basis. But I have a question regarding the replacement of the sewage at Anthony Chabot. Is that going to be? Are we going to be? Is it a reroute of the sewage system, or are they going to keep the old sewage bridge and the commuter station?
We don't know. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
I think, yeah, it's very complicated. And yeah, I think probably Glenn, as you mentioned, it is like sweating right now because it's a bad situation. So not that bad, but we do want to, hire some folks who this is what they do. And so that it'll be for a professional services contract.
Okay. And then there's one project on there I didn't see, and it's probably just because it's not that big, but it's the realignment of the stream trail, River Creek at the old church. That was supposed to have been done, or I thought was scheduled like in 2018 and 2019 and kept getting pushed back. I don't know if you've seen the creek if there's ever a time to either stabilize or realign that creek right in the middle of a drought would be perfect. And the logs have been sitting there for quite some time, and the walkway continues to erode. So I was wondering what the status was on that project.
If you're not talking.
Matt, there's Matt. He's going to respond.
Yep. We can't hear you, Matt.
When you're trying to work that, you're not, don't hold me to it with the neck. Generally, what this thing is.
We're hearing somebody else.
Well, since we can't hear Matt, maybe we'll let him respond to that in his presentation, which is coming next.
Oh, okay, great. That would be good. And then, did I have anything else? And then also, I didn't see Crowley in the future build outs, because I know it's going to go up for design this year. So is that going to be something that's going to be done within the next 3 years or so?
I think that I have to go back and look. I think we maybe had thought 26, 27. So we are going to kick that off this year. So we do have a concept plan that we had brought to the executive committee a couple of years ago. And so that is a project we anticipate to diving into this year. And as we scope it, I think that will help inform what the schedule will be.
Okay.
So we are optimistic that, we're not touching the water and it's a totally paved site. So, and it probably has opportunities for public art. So we are excited about that project. So, so we can follow up about that schedule.
Okay. And then lastly is the Anthony Chabot residence. Is that on schedule at all?
The Anthony Chabot residence?
Yes.
That's not on our radar at this point, but that's not to say it couldn't be soon. So we'll look to our leadership team and board about that. While we were talking, I did get a note from Ren to remind me that we are getting survey work on Crowley. So we have, that's been initiated.
Okay, great. Director Waspy.
Yeah, pardon me, I forgot. Lisa, on Tyler Ranch staging area, do you, I'm looking at the project list and it doesn't say how many parking spots there would be there. Have you developed that or figured that out yet?
Yeah, I'm going to have to get back with you the exact number, but I think it's about 40.
Okay, great. And And I know this isn't a trick question, but it's one I'm interested in because I've been there and it's real steep, if I'm not mistaken. And to get up to where you want to be, to get to some great trails. And I'm wondering if there's anybody, and I obviously not at the tip of your tongue, but an elevation from where the proposed staging area will be to the top of the ridge. Is that information available?
Director Waspy, I know that our trails, I think Lisa has frozen up for a minute, but Christina Kelchner again, our trails department is looking at that. So I know we do have that information and we can get that to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent. Director Wieskamp.
Taylor Ranch, that includes adequate for the horse trailers, because I know that was something that came in when we started this, that was going to be a location where they really would like to be. So I'd like you to be sure that we've got that accommodation.
Director Wieskamp, I think we may have lost Lisa Gorgian, unfortunately. So I think that's correct, but we'll get back to you to confirm. Oh, great. Ren Bates is here to answer that question.
Hi, Ren Bates, Capital Program Manager. I can answer the questions about parking. So there are a total of 70 parking spots at Tyler Staging Area, including 4 ADA. And we're also providing access for 3 horse trailer parking spots.
Oh, great. Thank you.
That's great. That's a nicer amount.
Yes, yes. It's going to be popular.
So I think my audio is working again.
Yes, I can hear
don't
you.
interrupt. So good. I'm glad we worked out the kinks before my presentation. But back to your question on the Redwood Stream Trail. So that right after we got ready to start design, there was the winter rains that even created more damage. And because of the additional damage, the project went to a FEMA project. So it's a FEMA project now. Jeff Rasmussen has hired a contractor to advance the design we had before. But they've sent the plans back to FEMA for approval at the concept level. And then when FEMA, I just talked to Jeff about this the other day, once FEMA approves that later this fall, we'll get to 65% design and then move it forward through permitting and implementation. I'm not sure about the specific time scale, but I know he said they fairly recently were trying to get final authorization for FEMA for the approach.
Oh, yes, I recall that now.
But that's kind of, it was a hurry up and then slow down while we wait to get the FEMA approvals. But it's in process and in progress.
So is that stabilization or is that a realignment? As originally you were talking about a realignment.
I'm not sure. It's stabilization and some minor realignment is the plan, and is what we're looking at. Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, if there aren't any other more questions, we are due. Oh, I see Director Corbett's hand.
Sorry, I have a couple of questions and some more compliments that I'd like to add on with everyone else. It's been a very difficult year, but it's clear that we have a great staff who continues to move forward and, as I like to say, never skips a beat. So thank you for all the great work. Just a couple of quick questions. One, and I don't need a lengthy answer, but when will we, I know it's in the future based on the list, but Northwest Territories and the whole Alameda Point projects, when will we start talking about that again? I know we have a ways to go, but when will we start seeing some discussions with the board on that?
Hi, Director Corbett. This is Brian Holt, Chief of Planning Trails and GIS. So the Northwest Territories area, frankly, the constraint there is that the Navy has not cleaned up the site. So, and the Navy needs to come up with a plan to determine what the cleanup is. And just in my experience of working on military bases, that could take a while. And then plus the actual physical cleanup of the site. And frankly, the site 32 is what they refer to it as, is the bulk of the Northwest Territories area. That said, I did have the opportunity to go out on the property last week with the Veterans Administration and talk about just some of the opportunities to work with the VA and their project. And what has been referred to as the seasonal Bay Trail alignment that kind of goes through, not within the Northwest Territories, but around the other portions of the base. And I actually came away pretty feeling more positive about that project than I had previously, and that I think there's some real nice opportunities to do some shoreline. I would call it more of a linear park along the shoreline, but just given the expansive views out there, really nice. And the VA is scheduled to start construction next year. So we're going to be convening sort of a small planning team with the VA to kind of coordinate our interests out there. It's always been the intent that they would be providing a seasonal day trail. So we're engaging more directly with them to coordinate that and our involvement there. So we'll continue working on the Northwest Territories. We continue to talk to the Navy, and we'll continue to be pushing on them. But then also looking at other opportunities to partner with the VA as they move forward on their project as well.
Okay, thank you. Couple things on that. I know we had a very productive meeting with the VA folks in DC the other day and continued to establish some great working relationships with them that seem extremely positive. So I'm so glad to hear that that's continuing to move forward. And do our partners in Alameda and the Alameda City Council, are they aware that we have some barriers to moving forward? Just because, as you know, we get questions from time to time. When are we moving forward? So do they know that as well? And
certainly the city staff does, and we've begun to convene. Following up on our completing the MOU with the city of Alameda, we started to convene, I guess I would call it a working group of Alameda staff, VA staff, Park District staff, and Navy staff to just kind of talk about everything that's going on the base. So a lot has come out from that. So Alameda City staff is certainly aware, but I will mention this is a topic on the agenda for the Alameda Park District Liaison Committee meeting next week. So that will certainly come up and be part of the discussion next week as well.
Okay, that sounds good. And I have one other thing on Alameda. I know this is probably not necessarily in this category of building, or capital projects, but I don't know if you all recall, we were planning some sneak peek trail walks or hikes through Northwest Territories just before COVID hit. So I'm hoping we can look forward to that in the not too distant future, looking at an opportunity like that as we continue to open up and the situation with COVID gets better.
Director Corbett, Christina Kelchner, AGM. That is certainly still on our radar, very much so. And I'm happy to report that the naturalists have started working on a video out there. So
Awesome.
At least we will be able to do a virtual tour. We were out there with the general manager a week or two ago, and they said that filming is in process. So hopefully we'll see that soon. And as soon as we are able to safely do so, we will get some tours going.
Yeah, and keep me in the loop. I'd like to be part of that as well.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And then one other thing, I didn't see, obviously the Judge John Sutter Shoreline is one of our newer beautiful parks in Director Rosario's district. And I don't see it on a design and construction project map, but I do know that, there's potential out there as well in the future. Do we know how far out those may be?
I think Lisa Gorgon, were you able to reconnect?
Here.
Or Jim O'Connor?
Lisa's back.
Okay, Lisa's back on, great.
You may need to repeat the question.
Yes, that'd be great.
I just know from past reports as we were looking towards the opening of the Judge John Sutter Shoreline that there's some potential planning and projects in the future out in that space. So I was just asking, since it doesn't show up on the list, the design list, when that may be, when we will be looking at that out into the future. What's the timing on that?
So just to be clear, you're talking about what we refer to as the West Overflow, which was the old Caltrans maintenance yard. Is that correct?
Well, whatever you want to call it, but the open space and park areas surrounding or within the Judge John Sutter Shoreline.
So in the West Overflow area, as you know, we worked closely with BADA when they were completing the Trailhead Parking Project. And they did a really wonderful job repaving and working on the drainage in that area. And so hopefully very soon, you know, as the COVID restrictions are lifted, our concessionaire, Oakland Venue Management, that's managing the Bridgyard building, is very excited about doing some programming out there and extending their lease to cover that. In addition, Park District staff will be using that space for programming work also. So that's hopefully coming up maybe towards the end of the year or in early next year in 2022. So that's the West Overflow space. But as far as the remainder of the park, in terms of the future development, I don't think that's on the ASD planning right now. The biggest hang up there, of course, is completing the cleanup of the Oakland Army base. That's the priority out there now, and then we can move forward with the future park planning for the future development of the park. I know that the BADA staff have been discussing about potential reuse of what they call the mole building. That's down near the end of the park, near the pier. And I think that's something that may happen sooner than later because they seem very interested in potentially moving forward with some work on that. But does that answer your question, Director Corbett?
Yeah, I just remember, I thought of it when we were having the discussion about public art, because I know that that is a potential space and spot for additional, amenities and seating, benches, whatever else would go into that urban park space. And the potential for public art is a good one.
Oh,
so I was
I
just
think
wondering
that part.
when, I just didn't see it on the list, the capital list. So I was just wondering how far out, if we're going to go back and visit and look at some of the other things that were, on the list of dreams for that spot, how far out that is.
Yeah, and at this point, I don't think that's on anybody's project list, but we certainly haven't forgotten about it. And Director Lane's comments made me think that that big tower that's out there in that space is a great place for a district leaf right now. I'm gonna work on that.
A lighted one, a neon one.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Matches those big bulletin boards out there.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Director Rosario, I just wanted to remind you that we are about a half an hour behind. We want to be sure we save some time for stewardship discussions. And we are scheduled for a break now, so your pleasure, what you'd like to do.
Does anybody, who needs a break? Or should we power through? Power through, thumbs up?
Go for it.
Okay, let's power through.
And Director Rosario, before we move on to the next items, thank you, Christina. I'd just like to answer your question regarding the park residence and Anthony Chabot. And you should know that what the projects that you see here in this board workshop speak to those capital projects under acquisition development, ASD, acquisition stewardship and development. It doesn't speak to capital projects that are currently under finance and management.
Slide. Okay, so the stewardship department, right now we have a total of 21 staff. We have actually 22 positions, but we organize those staff in 4 work units. One is the ecological services group, the other is the fisheries group, and we also have our wildland vegetation group and our wildlife management group. Next slide. So this just shows the org chart and how we're organized. Starting from the left, we have our wildland vegetation program manager, 3 staff with our botanist supporting that group, and then our 2 rangeland specialists and our vegetation ecologist. We have our wildlife program manager. We have 2 biologists that work with Doug Bell on wildlife program issues. And then we have our fisheries program manager, Joe Sullivan, and then Joe's one fisheries biologist, Ed Culver, that works with him. And then we look at Becky's group. That's the ecological services group. So it's Becky Tuden is our manager there. She has our IPM specialist, Pam Bites, and recently hired in the last year's Kimberly Crispin, our veg ecologist. And we also have one space there is a vacant position that's an ecologist position in the IPM group that we're hoping to start the recruitment on that in the very near future. And then also our water management group. with Hal McLean, and there's 2 water management technicians, Sabrina Sexton and Anya Bray, that support Hal. And then there's also 2 ecological services coordinators, Steve Bobzine, which you all are very familiar with, who's been with the agency for many years. We did some, but also we have a new ecological service coordinator, Josh Phillips, over the last couple of years. Josh has been with us for several years now, but Josh has been a great addition to the group and has really helped keep our routine maintenance program on track over the last couple of years. Next slide. Okay. So as I said in the introduction, the past few years have really brought a lot of new climate change stressors, and also with the pandemic, we've had increased park usage that have created some significant natural resource management challenges. The increase in last year's fires we had to really shift our priorities to look at those fires. And we've been working a lot on the fuel reduction for a number of years, but the fires on our property, it was the first time we had fires at that scale in many years. So it's created some unique opportunities for us to study those areas, but also look at how we can manage our parks to be more resilient for the next fire as we look at how our parks responded to those fires last year. Harmful algal blooms, I think we're hearing about those all the time. And it's been an issue over the last number of years. We've done a lot to really try to better manage those, but this year with the drought, it's seemingly one of our most challenging years yet. And we'll have a lot more coming to our committees, and I'll touch on a little bit more later in the presentation. And then also the drought stress and the tree die-off. So that's also been a big challenge, and it really has focused our shifting our priorities to focus and map those areas and really look at the cause of the tree die-offs that we're starting to see, and then really coordinate with our fire department and then legislative affairs and public affairs as we start looking for other sources of funding. And our grants department too. I should certainly mention the grants group, but we're all having to, the team is really coming together around that drought stress and the tree die-off issues. But it's just putting additional demands on our time, and it's just things we need to work on. And there's always increased regulatory oversight of all the work we do. We live in a very area, there's a lot of regulations we have to comply with, and so we're actively working to address those and look at how they're changing to make sure we can address them strategically and make sure our projects, we maintain compliance, but make sure our projects are designed in a way that it makes the regulation more simple and easy to permit. Okay, next slide. Okay, so reducing fire risk. So that's something we've talked about in the past, and we oversee our regulatory compliance of the fuels program. But we also, actively managing our rangeland program, and we've been doing a lot over the last few years to increase water availability on our rangelands to better distribute cattle. We've got several projects on the books for this year, and many more pond and water projects planned for next year too. So it's something we're actively working to keep the cattle distributed throughout the rangelands, but we're also dealing with extreme drought right now. So I think that's, as we're looking to develop new water sources, many of our sites of seasonal grazing are removing their cattle right now, and are removing their cattle earlier and earlier because there isn't enough forage out there. And so it's less of a fire risk. It's more of a really maintaining. There's less of a fire risk with the vegetation being eaten down, but there's just less. It's just a stress on the whole system with that increased, the decrease in precipitation. We've had to really just and also decrease the number of cattle on our properties. Also working to prioritize and implement invasive plant control within our recommended treatment areas. We've had to do more and more of that as we start maintaining and managing our areas within the fuel break. So we've been actively working on those to map and treat and remove weeds within our fuel management areas. And we're also implementing our Pallid Manzanita management plan in Sibley and Huckleberry. So we've got some actions planned for fuel reduction later this fall that should really enhance the pallid habitat in those areas. And we're really looking forward to implementing those projects while we continue to, like as I said earlier, study the fires from last year. So we look forward really to the end of this year. We should have a lot more data about how things are responding. Some areas are looking very good at how they're responding to the fires, but others, we had this overlap of fire and drought stress happening in some of the eastern parts of the county. So we're really going to be interested to see how our monitoring, what results we see from that monitoring. Next slide. Okay, so another thing we really focused on is protecting public health. You're very familiar with our beach water quality sampling we do during the swim season, and we regularly are sampling our drinking water systems. But the water quality monitoring has become more and more challenging over the last few years with the increase of the harmful algal blooms. That's the background of my slide there, is showing some scum from a harmful algal bloom. And we've had harmful algal blooms in most of our reservoirs this year. And some are better than others. Del Val just cleared up yesterday or over the last week or so, but we just made the recommendation to move Del Val to a caution yesterday. And that means that the swimming would be allowed, but we still need people to keep dogs out of those areas because it's still a really risk to dogs at Del Val. But other lakes have experienced blooms and they're in various levels of toxins or the toxins have been clearing up in others. Like Temescal starting to look better, but we're still really struggling with Lake Anza and also Quarry Lakes. Another thing we've had this year is, well, our spill response, and we know there was a Chevron wharf spill that happened, Long Wharf spill. We were involved in that response, but we're also, you know, really working with, as you know, the City of Oakland and other things when spills happen to make sure we're very well coordinated on how we respond to those spills into Lake Temescal or other district facilities. We've also had several incidents this year with aggressive coyotes. I think we were one of the first back at the beginning of the pandemic over at Dublin Hills. There was an incident, but there was a series of incidents in the Lafayette Moraga area. It was more in the city property, but many of those were on the adjacency to our lands or some of the searches for the coyotes happened on our land. So in those situations, we had to coordinate with CDFW and because they were really taking the lead from the warden side. But that's something we're really being mindful of and trying to really track where we're seeing these issues and respond to them appropriately. Also, we're working to improve our messaging about emergency environmental issues. So, you know, we're regularly putting out notices and putting out information, but we're also working right now with public affairs to improve some of our messaging and do more messaging on some of the positive messages, but also make sure when there is a hazardous situation, we can inform the public in an expedient manner. Next slide. Okay, and then, you know, maintaining biodiversity. It's a critical part of the work we do and maintaining and protecting our resources. And so we've been doing a lot of, you know, surveys and guidance for project designs. Also been conducting a lot of our pond surveys for amphibians and reptiles, also very critical this year at a drought year to see how things are responding. We also do a lot of monitoring our native fish in creeks and streams, but that one's been very challenging over the last few years with COVID because a lot of that work happens in close proximity and we haven't been able to do a lot of that work. And now this year in our work in our creeks and streams, it's just so dry. It's going to be hard to do some of our surveys without actually impacting the resources. So we're going to have to really take a step back and reevaluate our programs and really just look at habitat suitability more so than we can look at population numbers because we just don't want to create any additional stresses on those fish while we're doing our surveys. And also we provide regular technical assistance on restoration projects. Lisa touched on several of the projects that are happening, where we're actively coordinating with design and construction on larger projects and also working to identify restoration project needs. And we've got several projects we're working on to monitor and enhance monarch butterfly habitat. We've been working on those the last few years, and later this year, we'll be working on some work at Point Pinole to thin eucalyptus there to create more habitat for the monarchs where we've seen them overwinter in the past. But as you probably know, the population has been in severe decline and only several thousand were monitored in California last year. This is really a historic low for monarch butterflies. So we're trying to do what we can, but in many ways, this is a much more national and regional issue that we can only do so much to respond to. And then we also have to manage for abundant predators. Bullfrogs are an issue, and we've also had challenges with non-native feral pigs that are in there that really create a lot of ecological damage and also create a public health concern with the pig activity. Next slide. So, and also one thing we're really working is to build trust with the regulatory agencies. So we've talked many times about managing our 5-year maintenance permits. Those permits have been in place for several years. Right now we're working to renew our California Department of Fish and Wildlife permit. That permit is a little bit out of phase with the other ones. So we're working to renew it and get it onto a similar schedule where all the permits will expire kind of in the same year and we'll work to renew them. So our biological opinion with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has about another year and a half, 2 years. And so we're really actively working to implement that. But next year, we'll kick off the renewal process for that and our other permits to make sure once we get to the expiration time, we don't have a gap in those permits. So we do have this season and next season for those permits, but we want to start the permitting renewal effort next year. So once we get into 2023, we don't have any challenges that we've had in the past with those permits. And we also do it, like I said earlier, a lot of technical assistance to park staff. We've been conducting a lot of bird nesting, wood rat, and bat surveys on various hazardous tree removal projects, but also on the fuels management projects. We're doing a lot of those surveys to make sure we don't have impacts when we do our maintenance and management work. We're also providing a lot of technical assistance and regulatory review of all use of chemical treatments. So, we've really reduced our use of glyphosate. We're really doing that and looking at all the places where we're using chemicals to make sure we're using safe products and looking for safer alternatives as much as possible. Next slide. So those are really like some of the new issues that emerged and the areas of focus of last year. But now I really want to talk about what we've been doing to make sure we're strategically able to incorporate these things into our overall body of work and everything else we're doing, so we can make sure we're being strategic and focused and efficient. So the real focus and why we did this is to improve communications across departments and within our division and really throughout the agency and to better leverage department funding and grants, so we can identify areas of needs and make sure we're using our existing funding appropriately, but also where do we have needs for grants and other resources to support our monitoring and research or restoration projects. And we're really making sure we're aligning our staff work with department and district priorities. So to make sure any land use plans that are being developed have adequate review and surveys early in the process, but also being able to react and be prepared for emergencies or new projects that arise that are unexpected. And also make sure we can identify areas for improvement. So we want to really take a comprehensive look at areas for improvement. Next slide. So why do we do it now? Well, one, we've got more lands, and as I've mentioned, stricter regulatory requirements, but the changing climate is also just an increased challenge. We're having a lot of increased park usage, and it's also always important to just improve communication and make sure we're addressing these new challenges, make sure we're keeping everyone informed about the issues, but also collecting input and making sure we have good communication as we look at some of these newer issues and new challenges. So we're almost, and so the other reason we want to start this, when we started the process, we were almost fully staffed, and we were fully staffed for a while. And now, right now, we just have, we filled 7 vacant positions over the last 2.5 years. And right now we just have 1 vacant position. And also just want to make sense, we have new staff and we have a broad range of experience in our department. So wanted to make sure we tapped into all those resources and the knowledge we have within our group, and also knowledge within the agency. So next slide. So the planning process started in November 2019 and went through last November 2020. We'd hoped to kind of wrap this up early last year, kind of in the April-May time period, but then the pandemic happened and we had to kind of change our process. So this shows one of our first meetings on the slide, the picture on the slide. This is at the MLK Shoreline Center. We got together and started doing some of the facilitation and looking at the department and coming up with some of our goals. But then the pandemic happened and we had to move to a remote platform. And so we did most of our meetings through Zoom. It extended the process a little bit, and it also gave us actually a little more opportunity, I think, to have more meetings because we had more ability, easier to meet and get the whole group together through Zoom. But it also made it a little bit more challenging for the communication. And so it was a bit of a dual thing. We had a few more meetings because of the pandemic, but also it just made the process take a little bit longer. But what was the process? So first we started with interviews and surveys. So there was an interview and survey of the stewardship department, but also operations staff, ASD, and the executive team. We did some surveys with the AGMs, with the park unit managers, some park supervisors, and there was also, we also sent out a survey to staff that staff could fill out and kind of talk about things that could be improved in stewardship or challenges they had. We also sent that out to outside agency partners, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission staff, for San Francisco Water, Abby Fateman at East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy, and partners at East Bay Mud. And so we wanted to kind of get their take on our stewardship department also, and kind of incorporate all that feedback about how we could improve. So that resulted in a findings memo. We took that findings memo as we began developing our mission, goals, and priority actions. So we had several all-staff workshops and numerous manager meetings within stewardship to coordinate and keep us moving forward. And we started ranking our priorities and ranking our actions and making sure we had a comprehensive list of all the things we're doing, but then also ranking these emerging threats and trying to be strategic at how we would organize and devote our resources.
Okay.
And then we developed an implementation strategy. So
And
it's with a
yeah.
2-year planning horizon and
Run back and
priorities
forth.
and staff work plans. And so I'll talk more about that, but basically we did a lot of this planning horizon. We worked to develop staff work plans that establish priorities for each staff and make sure we're also meeting some larger goals. And so we've been working to roll that out over the last several months. So next slide. So what are the themes? So the findings memo. So the theme from the findings memo was that stewardship staff are talented and passionate about their work. And one thing that was resounding was that there had been a significant improvement in the routine maintenance process over the last couple of years, and there was much more satisfaction with the department as staff saw those projects moving forward, and as we have a good program in place to bring in projects and to submit our applications back to the agencies. And I will say it's working very well this year. We just submitted one of our applications yesterday, because each year we have to ask for authorization for our projects under those permits. Even though the permits are in place, we still have to ask the agency for permission for those projects. And they're typically due June 1st, and we're always up against the deadline, or we're always sometimes having to ask for an extension because it's challenging to pull all the information together. It's over the last couple of years, it's been running much smoother. And this year we're actually getting our applications in a little bit early. So I really got to thank Josh Phillips and Sunshine Townsend on that. And certainly Becky Tuden's leadership has been really critical in coordinating and organizing the group. And so they've created a great team there with Becky, Josh, and Sunny to work with operations and to get information early and to also work to refine that information in an efficient way. So I'm really proud of the work they've been doing on routine maintenance. And that showed up in this survey. So areas for improvement. Some areas for improvement around communication and relationship building. We saw some opportunities for improving communication internally and externally, and building better relationships with new staff as staff change and turnover. We need to maintain and create new relationships and also make sure we're informing and having clear communication. Also want to improve our data management and sharing. That's been a challenge for a number of years with a lot of our data gets in field notebooks or in file drawers or on someone's hard drive on their computer, and it's not easily accessible to others. So that was one area that was also identified for improvement. Also, there was an interest in making sure our scientific research is focused on enhancing the management of our lands and also helping to plan the work of the district, and making sure that when we're doing research, it's focused for management or to inform future planning. Next slide. So after taking into account all those surveys and our facilitated sessions, we came up with a mission and a vision for the stewardship department. And so this is something that was kind of consensus among the group and really in mind of the district's master plan. And really making sure we're meeting the goals of the master plan and also meeting the goals of the agency. So we came up with the vision of the Park District lands are resilient, interconnected parklands that sustain diverse natural communities and are meaningful to present and future generations. That's something, it was quite interesting as we went through the process and came up with draft statements to see how similar they were within the group. I mean, there was a real interesting synergy as we did a lot of our drafts and it was work to combine those drafts into one comprehensive statement. But really our mission is to work collaboratively to help manage and enhance natural resources and provide science-based solutions that comply with environmental regulations and really support our recreational activities. And that's, I think the real key there is just the collaboration and using science and informed management to really protect and enhance our lands. Next slide. So was the criteria for prioritizing the goals of the department? So one, we want to look at interdisciplinary and landscape level management and make sure also we're, like I said multiple times, collaborating and creating strong relationships with science-based solutions, and then making sure we're responsive and providing practical support. If we have to say no, kind of explain to someone, well, why no? And then what is an alternative? What if we can't allow a certain activity, what's another way to do that? Or what's another way to adjust that activity to make sure we can still accomplish the goal. Also want to make sure we're becoming more efficient and streamlining processes where possible. And also a major goal of this was to make sure we're creating a diverse, respectful, and collaborative departmental culture. Very critical just to create a healthy working department to have that good, respectful and collaborative culture. Next slide. So as we went through that with that lens and those goals, we established, I think we missed a slide. I think we skipped over one. There we go. So we come up with several areas of focus. And so the first area of focus for stewardship in our work plans is going to be strategic resource management. So it's something we're working on and we have been working on, but really one of our primary goals is going to be to complete an ecological health assessment to establish a baseline of ecological health. This is really directly tied to our master plan and our resource management objective 1. And the master plan says we will maintain an inventory of all of our resources and look at how the health is changing over time. It's something we've done for many years, often very individually for a certain species or an endangered species or a certain resource. We're trying to do this more comprehensively and combine all of that data to make assessments about specific habitat types and specific resources. So the ecological health assessment will look at our grasslands, we'll look at our oak woodlands, we'll look at our ponds and our stream systems. And we're working to combine existing data. And so the ecological health assessment is also a very collaborative effort looking at other agencies, the PUC, the East Bay, other large landowners in the East Bay and what they're doing and making sure we're collecting data in similar manners and then combining and aggregating that data to make assessments on a landscape level about what the health of those resources are. And we look forward to really talking more about this, but this is really going to be a focus of our work over the next few years. And we will have some of that work completed later this year. So we're excited to share that once we have more of that work compiled. And we're also going to, sorry, back, wasn't quite done. We're also working to establish a comprehensive data collection and reporting and management system that will be integrated with our GIS system. So that's another one of our challenges, I said earlier, is that we have a lot of this data we've been collecting for a number of years, and it gets into reports, it gets into other publications or databases, but it's not comprehensive. And it's often, if someone comes and says, well, what's the status of a certain species in a certain park? We may have to go to that one individual to ask that knows about that or did that research. So we're trying to really combine all this information into a data collection system that will be easier for other staff to access, but also easier for just anyone in stewardship to pull up the information and answer a question when a question comes in, and to help coordinate future work. So now we're ready for the next slide. So other big area of focus is that collaboration and communication. And so one thing we're going to be doing over the next 2 years is developing a formal process for coordinating requests from other departments and divisions. Right now, requests can come in to all levels of staff. Sometimes if someone's busy or out in the field, there maybe take some time to get back to them, and then we may need to pass it on to someone else. So we want to come up with a little bit more organized system, some central requests, so to make, and a tracking system to make sure every request that comes into stewardship gets a timely response, and to make sure we're coordinating and giving good information out on each of these requests for support or requests for resource information. So we want to have a formal process that will be very clear to everyone how to get help from stewardship, how do you submit it, and what are your needs, just so we can, one, track the demand and needs for support, but also make sure we're being very responsive. And we also want to identify and implement protocols to improve communication and facilitate a better working relationships with other departments. So we've been doing various meetings, but we're really looking to roll out this plan to all departments, to meet with them, talk to them about our priorities, and then continuing to assess what some of those needs are. And next slide. And then our third area of focus is really the stewardship department functionality. But to really identify, we want to, over the next 2 years, identify and prioritize methods for increasing diversity and inclusion within stewardship, and to make sure, and it relates to staffing, but that also relates to how we're collecting and utilizing resource information. So, making sure we're looking at diversity of opinions and also collaborating with community groups and also outside agencies. But really, also want to make sure we're recruiting staff and bringing in a diverse set of interns and of experiences and knowledge. And also want to develop a clear process for departmental decision making. So we're going to be looking at some of the areas where we have to make recommendations, and make sure once we're making a recommendation on a specific thing that it's really coordinated through the department, and that there's a clear process for how we're making those decisions. And that's something we'll be focused on over the next 2 years. So what are some of the next steps? So we're going to be sharing and discussing our strategic action plan with other departments. We're going to be doing individual focus meetings with various departments in the agency. We do plan to follow up with the internal and external satisfaction surveys, and we plan to keep that to be a regular basis of how we're tracking the things we're doing. and then another aspect of how we're managing this work is each staff has come up with a work plan, and the managers have worked to develop a work plan for all staff within the stewardship department. And it's right now it's a 2-year work plan, but we'll be revisiting it every 6 months to look at progress and timing, how we're staying on track with things. And then also looking at it as we do our annual performance evaluations and making sure people are meeting the goals they're setting for themselves and the goals for our programs through our work plans. So we really look at, is this a way to better organize our efforts, make sure we're meeting the new emerging demands, but also at the same time, not losing focus on some of the critical things we have to do as new issues emerge. Okay, I think that's the last one, the next slide. Yeah, it's just the acknowledgements. And but yeah, this is very important, the acknowledgement. So as you see on the left, these are a lot of the staff and managers that were interviewed as part of the assessment process. But we also worked actively with a consultant, Tina Stott, and she was excellent in facilitating the group, and she had a lot of experience working with the state parks and also Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space, and has worked with a lot of other resource agencies. So she really understood the kind of the work we do, and was just a great, provided great assistance to us during this process, because she really understood resource management and understood the challenges of balancing all of these competing challenges. But also I want to acknowledge Dina Robertson, who helped manage that contract, our vegetation program manager, and then also Becky Tuden and Sunshine Townsend have been extremely helpful in this whole process, and are really the team now working to help implement this plan. So we've established kind of a management lead that we will be rotating for the first year. Becky and Dina are doing it together, and we may continue having a partnership of managers kind of focusing this and working through this plan. But we're going to always have a core work group that's really looking at the plan, looking at the emerging issues, and making sure we're incorporating them into our work. And I just really want to thank them. It was challenging to bring them here today with the uncertainty of timing. And if we were in person, they would certainly be in the audience, and we'd have them answering questions. But I really just can't thank Dina and Becky enough for their support in this planning, and Sunny for just kind of pulling it all together and just being a great resource in all things stewardship. Sunny is just a great resource in data management, and also just keeping things moving and keeping us on track. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions and on any of the issues I touched on, or just on this strategic plan and how we plan to keep focused on the needs of the district.
Thank you, Matt. Director Wieskamp, you're on mute.
I don't see how you keep track of all the myriad of things going on. The gun club cleanup, is there anything new or planning? How is that moving forward?
Well, the assessment's moving forward. So we're actively working to assess the areas of contamination.
Okay.
We did one full round of testing. And I guess some of the good news would be that the contaminated soils weren't as deep as we thought they could be, but it was much broader than we expected it to be. So while the contamination was not as deep, so it kind of went down to the soils at a kind of a shallow level, I would say. But what we had to go out and do more testing now, because some areas, the overshot area was much larger than we expected. So they were just out last week, or I think this week too, doing some surveying and expanding that survey, so we have a comprehensive assessment. So we are in the regulatory process now with the Regional Water Quality Control Board is taking the lead. They took the lead. It was between DTSC and the Water Board. So we're in the formal regulatory process. They approved the work plan to assess the site.
Good.
And we communicated with them again before we expanded this testing. And so they're well aware of that. And so that will all be wrapped up. And once that's wrapped up, we'll have a better idea of what the cleanup will entail and how much dirt will need to be moved and what some of the options will be. And so that's about as much as I can say now. I think one of the other things with the next round of testing, we're going to be going down more into the creeks and the downstream areas and to see how far the contamination may have left the site. And so that will be the next round of a lot of our sampling.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Any other questions from the board? Director
I wanted to congratulate you on a couple of things that you listed there, and one was being sure that you're aligning with district priorities. And I think in another section you talked about research and being sure that essentially you're congruent with planning and what other things are happening, because sometimes we've had the experience of stewardship having really legitimate focuses that they are doing, but they are not. But in other areas, we don't have the scientific information we need to proceed with a district priority or a land use plan. So I really appreciate your including that, because I think it's we started improving a little while ago, and I think for us to be aware of that, I appreciate that. And then I have a question about the master plan, because you refer to the master plan several times, and I am wondering if you are finding that the master plan is what you need as you do all of these stewardship functions. Are there things that you would like to see in the master plan that aren't there, or that hold you back, or that there are any deficiencies? Because we have had it for a while, and I'm just wondering if it's current enough to be what you need.
Yeah, that's a good question, Director Lane. We were certainly looking at it to make sure the work we're doing is in alignment with that. And certainly looking at as future work would meet those needs. I think it certainly had some forward thinking in 2013 about climate change, and there's some good language in there. I think it could be refined a little bit as we're starting to see what these really stressors are. I think some of the language is very general, but whether that's critical for us doing our work, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think a lot of the work we're doing, I think it's already a priority of the agency to do a lot of these things. And things we're already focused on. So I think it would be good to probably refine it a bit and make sure it's current. I'd say overall, it was a pretty broad brush in the past when we looked at resource management issues. So it really does capture a lot of things we're doing, but I'm sure it could be slightly improved as the next time we do it.
Thanks.
Any other? Director Corbett and then Director Waspy.
Thank you very much. Matt, first of all, I just want to say I'm so happy to see all the great work you're doing in strategic planning and putting together a plan for stewardship. It's so important. And, as we know, with the changes in our environment, the stewardship piece is really, rises to the top in all of our priorities. So it's just so important. And I especially appreciate it because, the Park District is a popular place, and during COVID, even more used and more visited. And I really think we should spend more time emphasizing the work that's done in stewardship, so we can help share with people the fact that there's a need for balance between recreation and stewardship. The people who vie and compete to come to our Park District and use our trails are coming because of the work that stewardship does. They want to be at this beautiful place, this wonderful place to recreate and, enjoy some peaceful time as well. So I just think it would be great that we could find ways to emphasize even more, some of the projects that you're working on, so people understand that and think about that when they say, I'd like to do this in the park and I'd like to do that in the park. So they also have the understanding of what you're doing and why we're doing it. We're doing it because we love the environment, and also because we sometimes have to follow, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, because we follow regulations, all of those things. So I just appreciate the work that you're doing and your entire team, especially for the planning. I would really love it too if there might be an opportunity. I'm not asking you to answer this, but I'm just throwing it out as one board member. We have an opportunity every year to come to the stewardship workshops that stewardship puts on, and we get to hear great presentations. But it would be really nice once a year, or maybe even every other year, where there would be a time for the board to have, more of an open conversation with stewardship, or, you know what I mean, a little more interactive. I think that would be great, especially since stewardship issues are becoming so much of a priority, and, would really help us in our, our policymaking role as board members. And I agree with Beverly, the master plan. That's a good place to look to see whether we have what we need to help support the work of stewardship. But even the master plan maybe should be taking a look at stewardship first and, sort of coordinating more from that end. Do you know what I mean? So, I just wanted to say, I hope we have even more and more opportunities to promote and show people the work that's being done, why it's being done, and why it's so necessary. And I'll add one last thing. I was particularly pleased to see your work on monarch habitat because it was something that I mentioned years ago, and I appreciate your work there. So, and I could go on, but I really appreciate the work that's done at stewardship. It's really so important to our entire mission and philosophy at the Park District. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Director Corbett. There's a lot to respond to there. I mean, you piqued a lot of things of my interest there with that. I mean, but one thing I just quick add towards the end, the monarch piece. I did mention Point Pinole because that's the big project that'll be happening this year on eucalyptus management and also planting more nectar species. But we continue to do the work at Oyster Bay to create more nectar species there to support the colony that's at San Leandro Golf Course there. And we also incorporated monarch pollinator species in Encinal Beach planting, because there are some, during the project, we found there have been some monarchs observed by Susan Ramos, one of our naturalists over there at, she observed them in the eucalyptus right by the Encinal Beach. And so during the planting process, we better make sure we have good nectar plants in that Encinal seed mix. But the first part of with public affairs, that's something we've been talking to them over the last few weeks, and we want to going to continue those conversations about how to get more of these positive messages out there. And public affairs does a great job in their regular scheduled messages about the risks and things, and also on other issues, on new issues as they come up, or new projects that happen. But we want to focus some more of the positive message on the benefit of these resources. And so not just associated with a new project or something, and make sure we're not always telling people to, okay, don't pick the mushrooms, or don't, beware it's rattlesnake season, or watch out for ticks, that it's more of the positive message of things. So it's not all just about the areas to be concerned, but what are the values of these? So it's something we've been thinking about and looking forward to do more. And then your other point about a more informal conversation with the board, I'm not sure what format that would take, but I like the suggestion. I think the board members often always have good input when we one-on-one, but we often don't get that time. And that's where we have more of those informal conversations. We don't often have the chance. So I'm not sure what the format would be, but I think we would certainly welcome that. And we can think more about what the structure and format of something that would be.
Yeah.
And then the stewardship seminar, so I don't want to cut you off, but we will be doing a stewardship seminar this fall. We're already starting the planning. And so that's something we've done annually. We're probably going to keep it in a virtual environment to keep it efficient this year, but we're looking forward to doing it in person in a future year. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I was just going to add to what you had said. The work that you do is so important and so informative to our policymaking role. And so, the more the chance we get to know and learn about what you're doing, the better, I think.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Director Wasby.
Well, yeah, I would echo everything Director Corbett said, and I admire all your great work, and darn, wish I had stayed in school and been in the stewardship department. But I guess a specific question. So when is the seminar? Did you have dates yet?
I think we do in November. We haven't done the formal announcement. I think we're still looking at the logistics. We will be putting those out really soon. So we'll make sure to get those to Yolanda and Sharon, get those on your calendars. Where we are going to plan to do it over 2 days, and I know it's at the beginning of November. I just, without the exact date in front of me, I don't want to give you misinformation.
Great, thank you.
Any other board members?
Mr. President, can I say one more thing?
Okay.
Can we get the slides for this and the other, in fact, the other presentations that we've had today? It would be really great to have those.
Absolutely, Director Corbett. We will get those out right away.
Thank you very much.
Great. I just wanted to say this is a great presentation, and all the presentations are really good today. And I just wanted to congratulate Christina for your vision, and to thank your chiefs who obviously are cooperating with that vision, and you're really improved communications and be able to reorganize. And I think it definitely shows in the work that you're producing, and also the communication that's happening between your chiefs and the departments. So congratulations to you for that work. And as far as stewardship, I think I really appreciate, as Dr. Alvarez always says this, we always, all of our projects have an environmental ethic, and I think the stewardship department is our environmental conscience. Mm-hmm. And I know as a park supervisor, I've always availed myself of stewardship department for questions and answers and guidance. And I think that relationship has continued into the field, and it's very, very important. And it goes all the way up to the board members as well. So thank you. I think all the board members appreciate the expertise and the care, and it's very, very much appreciated, I'm sure. Director Eccles, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just, well, partly I want to echo your remarks, but also I want to say specifically, thank you so much for the incredible work you do. And I really love your passion and strategic vision, and and I also love that you all do so much to preserve and to make our beautiful public land accessible. But at the same time, I really appreciate the work that Christina and her team are doing around investing in the people and the staff and the planning that's going on, and some of the things that we've heard today in terms of the planning that is going on to bring in new staff, to build your staff, and Christina mentioned all of the positions that she's filled, and so this is this is important too, because after all it's the people that make it all work. So I just wanted to underscore that, and really thank you all for your incredible presentations today, and all, of course, all of the people behind the presentations. And I didn't ask many questions today because you all are also responsive and helpful, that I feel like I'm pretty up to speed on at least the things in my ward anyway. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks for those comments, Director Eccles and Director Rosario. I wanted to say something quick. I know when I went through the org chart, and I didn't even intend to do that. I was just showing it up there, and I started going through it. I felt like I started going fast because I knew I didn't have a whole lot of time. But if I had a little bit more time, and I'll take this out, we have hired some really incredible new staff. I mean, we've got, some staff that have been around for a long time. It's Doug Bell, has been around for many years, Steve Bobzine and Dave Rinchie. But in the last year, we've added several new staff in the last year and a half, 2 years, that have just been excellent additions to the team. And you'll be seeing more of them at various committee meetings and other things. But you've heard Allison Rowe, managing our grazing specialist. She's been an excellent addition. And Peter Hopkinson, the veg ecologist, came to us from UC Berkeley and has a long history working on research on district lands. He's been a great addition, but I also called out Josh earlier for his work. But Kimberly Crispin also, she was a gardener at Ardenwood and came to us and has been a great addition to the IPM team. So we didn't highlight all the new staff, and even Tammy Limbs, she's been around for several years now, but she's just been a great resource. Oh, and I got to call out Sabrina Sexton, who's just a recent new hire in our water management technician. She came to us with a lot of water management experience, but also had worked as an interpretive student aide So she had a real special connection to the district, and just coming back, she's just been a seamless, just came right in, seemed like she'd been here for 5 years, and she's just been a great resource for our monitoring program. So, and I should be remiss to not call Ed Culver. We've just all this great new staff. Ed has been just a great addition. And while we haven't been able to do a lot of the fisheries work as much over the last year, Ed's really stepped up and has done a great job on monitoring the lakes and for the harmful algal blooms, and then has been helping with all kinds of wildlife surveys throughout the parks and our fields management surveys. So we just, all of our new staff have just been great additions to our team and really strengthening our stewardship group. And just with all that, then, I mean, as we're looking at certain things, we've got other folks like Sunshine and Kristen who've been around for a while now. They're almost, having some level of seniority in the group, even though they're relatively new in the bigger picture. But so, I know I'm leaving out people that have been promoted. I wasn't intending to do that, but I'm really excited about the team we have. And we've just got a great group that's working together. And Becky's been doing a great job coordinating that ecological services group. So.
Great. Yes. And I hope, and hearing some of those names, I think hopefully you're also thinking about future succession. Because I know a few of those folks have been around for a while. That concludes our presentations, and I would like to reintroduce our Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez, for closing remarks.
Oh, thank you so much, Director Rosario. I will be brief since we have covered a lot of ground here in showcasing a very large body of work for mission delivery across multiple departments. And what I really enjoy hearing and like to underscore is that they're integrating nature-based solutions and science-based solutions to trail planning along the Bay shoreline, to the restoration of inland urban watersheds, while adapting to what comes with the changing climate. And in closing, I would like to bring our focus, and you already did that already, but I would like to bring our focus to the good people behind this workshop. It really takes many, many people to bring the information together, like the GIS staff who did a lot of work in mapping and developing visual materials, and who have been with us throughout the entire workshop as a resource to make sure that the technology runs well. And the work that everybody does is indeed so important for mission delivery. And what we saw here today is their synergy, which I'm really, really excited to see, as well as the board. So I would like to echo the board and General Manager Landreth in acknowledging the people behind ASD under the leadership of AGM Kelchner. So if I can have all of the ASD staff turn on your videos, and if the board can please join me in giving them a real sincere round of applause for an amazing workshop, because it's a lot of work and it's all coming together very, very nicely. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you all. Very nice. And so before we conclude, Madam Secretary Pennell, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do, President Rosario. We have 2 emails that were sent in, but before I read them, is there anyone present in the room that would like to speak? Okay, then I will move on and start with our first public comment from Scott Bartlebow from the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay. Dear Board of Directors and staff, on behalf of the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay and our growing membership, we want to express our sincere appreciation for the efforts of Park District staff during the pandemic in maintaining public access, as getting outside on trails has never been more needed. We also appreciate the opportunity to review and comment on the detailed staff report on capital projects and stewardship activities. To assist in ensuring that the Park District considers the perspectives for responsible cyclists, we provide the following observations from our review of the materials presented to you today. We would like to see the following projects added to the active projects list. Sibley-McCosker Trails. We do not see any indication of efforts to add back into this construction at McCosker Ranch, the multi-use trail, allowing cyclists to avoid a dangerous section of Pinehurst Road. This trail was supported by the overwhelming number of participants at the public workshops work on this project and included in the FEIR, yet was put on hold at the final board hearing on the project. What is the plan for reconsidering this proposal, and what are the interim steps that can be taken to provide public access from Sibley Park down through McCosker Ranch to Pinehurst Road? Wildcat Canyon Flow Trail. This proposed trail project provides an opportunity for the Park District to take advantage of the private funding and improve trail experiences for all trail users in a high user density area of the district. The board has noted the cost of trails, and the district works hard at leveraging funding opportunities to maximize taxpayer dollars. This is an excellent opportunity to avoid spending taxpayer dollars, address the increased demand for mountain bike-oriented trails, and improve trail experiences for all trail users. A placeholder for trail improvements at Briones. The recently begun efforts are at a very early stage, and we are very appreciative of your support for staff resources. A project placeholder would demonstrate a further level of commitment by the district to address the issues of the varied trail users at Briones. The mountain biking community looks forward to continuing to being a part of this effort to improve experiences for all trail users. Bridge on the Bay Area Ridge Trail section in Kennedy Grove. We have discussed this project with staff, and their initial field survey of the project was favorable. This project would decrease impact on the environment and improve trail safety. There are a number of projects we are very glad to see. We have comments on the following projects, which are included in the project listing. Anthony Chabot, Soaring Hawk. We strongly support this project and are glad to see it progressing. We'd be very happy to organize a volunteer trail work day to support this effort if the opportunity was presented. Bart Garin to Vargas Plateau, Louis. We strongly support this project as it provides a significant extension of the Bay Area Ridge Trail. Pleasanton Ridge and Tyler Ranch, internal trails. We strongly support these projects and hope that they will keep moving and reach construction in 2021 and 2022 as indicated. They have been a long time coming. We are ready to assist with the volunteers in any way we can. The rest of this, we have hit 3 minutes, and so I will stop reading it at this point, but because we have one more letter to read. Just to let the speaker know who submitted the comment, your comments have been forwarded to the Board of Directors and Executive Staff. So the second comment is by Mike Vandeman. How long are you going to continue the charade of pretending that bicycles and pedestrians can coexist on unpaved trails? It's already been over 30 years, and there has been zero progress. Bicyclists over 13 are not allowed on our sidewalks, which are much sturdier than any trail. If bicycles are a safety hazard on a smooth, solid paved sidewalk, they will obviously be an even greater hazard on an unpaved trail. In addition, mountain bikes are a danger to wildlife, both directly, for example, running over snakes, as happened to a federally threatened Alameda whip snake in Black Diamond Mines, or indirectly, by increasing the distance and speed that people can travel, therefore preventing animals from the full use of their habitat. It's high time that you did the right thing and restricted bikes to pavement where they belong, and don't increase the amount of pavement in the parks. This won't harm mountain bikers a bit, since they are all capable of walking, just like everyone else. For enforcement, you should install electronic bicycle detectors on trails that immediately notify the police. I'm working on creating wildlife habitat that is off limits to humans. Quote in quotations, pure habitat. Want to help? I spent the previous 8 years fighting auto dependence and road construction. Wildlife must be given top priority because they can't protect themselves from us. Please don't put a cell phone next to any part of your body that you are fond of. Stop obeying dictators and incompetent leaders from this time forward. Please share this message as widely as possible. And that was https://mjvande.info. And that is the end of the comments, the public comments.
Great, thank you. Any other closing comments from the board? Seeing none, I've been asked to say that your ethics compliance or completion forms are due to Yolanda as soon as possible. And then also, I just wanted to last say before we want to acknowledge the piece that that Matt Grau brought up about the DEI as diversifying the workforce. And with that in mind, this was something I meant to say at our last board meeting, that June is going to be LGBTQ month, and I hope that the Park District can have a robust acknowledgement of that celebration. So, and with that, I would like to adjourn.